Now the other day I was asked a question: who are the most expensive football players in the world right now? And according to Transfermarkt, it's actually Erling Haaland and Vinicius Jr. who are both joint top with a value of 200 million euros. But that's not my problem. My problem is looking down at the rest of this list. I mean, according to this site, Martin Ødegaard is the 14th most expensive footballer in the world. And no, I'm not making a big deal out of this because Martin Ødegaard is some sort of scrub of a footballer, but still, 14th most expensive player in the entire world used to be actual world-class players. And I think me looking at this table the other day and seeing all these names, all these values, just put me into some sort of existential crisis, because right now we are going through a shift in football that nobody has really got to grips with yet. And of course I can point out the obvious, like Messi's playing in the Burger League and Ronaldo is playing in the Halal Burger League, but still, it's not just because the two GOATs have pretty much one foot out the door when it comes to playing football in general. It's the global landscape of the game. It's completely changed. Looking at this table of the most expensive footballers in the game right now, it's clear to see that we are officially in a completely new era of football. We are no longer seeing any great names of the past. The Suarez's, the Ibras, Messi's gone, Ronaldo's gone, Neymar's just joined Santos after absolutely robbing Al Hilal. Al Hilal might as well start a new project. Get Zion, that baby, in. They need him. He'd probably have more of an impact than Neymar did for their club. The entire golden era of Barcelona has completely faded out of the game. Bruce just retired. Even the likes of De Bruyne for Manchester City looks like he's heading out of that door next season. Right now, all the players that dominated for the last decade are completely fading out of the game, giving way to a new generation of talent. From Erling Haaland's robotic efficiency to Jude Bellingham's midfield mastery, football is now entering a new golden age where we actually have to accept that these guys are the new era. You know, as much as we think that they're not as good as the last, we just gotta put our fingers together, cross them, and hope for the best. And let's of course start by talking about the individual that is at the top of this table, Erling Haaland. Now, despite having a slow season with Manchester City this year, there is no doubt that Erling Haaland is the best striker in football right now. Of course, the brilliance of Harry Kane and Lewandowski are still lacing up their boots week in and week out, but Erling Haaland is about 15 years younger. Maybe not 15 years. And people are forgetting that during the 2022/23 season, this guy scored 52 goals in 53 games, breaking the record for the most goals in a single Premier League season with 36, with his performances being instrumental in Manchester City winning a treble that year. And even though he's having a quote-unquote slow season, just take a look at his numbers. With 28 goals in 25 games in all competitions, let's just take a step back and realise that you're saying that Haaland is not as good as last season when your starting striker is Nico Jackson, when your starting striker is Eddie Nketiah, when your starting striker is Højlund. You need to calm down. And I think for the last stretch of this season, he has a lot to prove. With the incoming Omar Mamouche that is going to help him grab a few goals, I think we'll see that he'll be hitting definitely the golden boot. And from a man valued at 200 million euros to another valued at 100 million euros, which I actually think, come on, 100 million euros, Jude Bellingham. That would get you his left arm. Now, Jude Bellingham's story has to be one of the most inspirational ones for young, promising English talents. Rising at Birmingham City, where they retired his number, moving to Germany and absolutely balling out for Borussia Dortmund with brilliant displays against the likes of Manchester City in the Champions League, and then having enough leverage to make an incredible move to Real Madrid, where in his first season, I have never seen that much of an impactful first season from a midfielder. Double-digit assists, double-digit goals, and crucial clutch performances against the likes of Barcelona, where he scored twice in that game. I remember he scored one from about 25 yards out, banging it into the top corner, and in the last minutes of the game the ball gets put into the box and it's Jude Bellingham who turns up. This is the new midfield maestro of this era, and you can chat to me about, oh, his attitude on the pitch is not good enough. Shut up. In 2023, Jude Bellingham won the Golden Boy award, and then in 2024 he followed that up by moving to Real Madrid and then winning the La Liga Player of the Year. He has set the expectation so high for his position that people are now expecting midfielders to play just like him. And that's why right now he's firmly placed as one of the most expensive and valuable players in the game. We've also got to talk about Kylian Mbappe, who is pretty much the heir to the throne, with his biggest inspiration being Cristiano Ronaldo. And now, after a slow start to the season, his numbers are actually looking quite good. Mbappe's got 22 goals in all competitions this season, and he's only just getting in the groove. We know how good this guy can be. The rapid pace, the clinical ability, the clutch finishing. We've seen him do it before. World Cup final against Argentina, all these big games, even when he was a 17-year-old at Monaco, banging it in against Manchester City, going toe-to-toe with this team. I know he's got the ability, you know he's got the ability, but it's just about him laying out the blueprint and finding his best form in this side of all-stars that is Real Madrid. And talking about another all-star that is on his team that supposedly got robbed of a Ballon d'Or, we have to talk about another player that is joint top of the table of the most valuable players in football, Vini Jr. Now, Vini Jr. is currently the pinnacle of left wingers in football, evolving from a raw talent at Real Madrid that wasn't really trusted on the ball to Mr. Reliable, Mr. I'm gonna score in every knockout round of the Champions League. This guy might as well grab the S-curl, grab some blonde hair dye and call himself VR7, because he has stepped onto that left side of the pitch and absolutely dominated it for several years now. In the 2023 Champions League, he was voted as the best young player, and since that moment his performances in Europe have been consistently amazing. This season so far he's got 18 goals and 12 assists, even in this ever-changing Real Madrid side. He has been the main guy for so long, and he's had to deal with a new ego that is in the dressing room, which is Kylian Mbappe, and still he's getting the numbers and he's getting things done. And from one prolific winger to another, we have to talk about Bukayo Saka. Now, Bukayo Saka is one of these players that is completely overhated by everyone but Arsenal fans. This is a guy that has been consistent and carrying Arsenal since he broke out into the scene, playing in the Europa League for Arsenal, where he scored his first goal against Frankfurt. And time again he comes up clutch, whether it's for club or country. At the start of this season, Saka was on course to have one of his best yet. With 12 goals and 10 assists, he was then sidelined by injury, and we are seeing the effect that has had on Arsenal as a whole. But of course you've got the likes of Saka, Salah, Palmer that are in the Prem doing their thing. But Lamine Yamal is also another player that is in this new era of footballers that is at the start of his journey. At 17 years of age, Yamal has now played over 100 games for Barcelona, breaking multiple age-related records. Having 10 goals and 8 assists this season so far, he's another one of these players that is, claiming at the throne. These pinnacle footballers that are doing the most to become one of the best. And alongside him in the same team is Rafinha, who has been balling out this season. I think Rafinha and Mo Salah this season are honestly the two Ballon d'Or contenders when it comes to just their form. I don't think they are the best players in football. I think, these are just outstanding seasons, but what they're doing is not being spoken about enough. Now, these two are amazing, and there's a bunch of other rising ballers like Ethan Nwaneri that are breaking through, but there seems to be this bigger issue that made me actually make this video, because of course this shift in football is happening, but it makes me just so annoyed when I look at the past and what football used to be, and then just compare it with the players that are so called the best right now. Because they're all amazing players and we are watching them week in and week out and living through their amazing performances, but just 5 or 6 years ago, you look at the top 10 of the most expensive players from 2017, the list is phenomenal. It can't be helped for someone like me who grew up during this era to look back on it so fondly with this, nostalgic vision, because it's just a fact that Ronaldo, Messi, Neymar, even Harry Kane that were just thriving in the 2017, 2018, they're so much better than the players that we have as the most valuable in football right now. This was a time where Salah wasn't the pinnacle of football. He was one of just another world-class player in the game. Hazard was playing, Bale was playing, Mane was playing, who was arguably better than Salah during this period. The shift in football is happening. Now, sometimes when I'm watching football, I'll just put my hands up and say, man, I was unfamiliar with your game. And the other day I sat down and watched Atletico Madrid versus Barcelona in the Copa del Rey semi-final. And I put my hands up and said, man, Pedri, I was unfamiliar with your game. Because during this game between Atletico Madrid and Barcelona, Pedri put on an absolute show, but this season it's become somewhat of a standard of Pedri performances. Because he's been instrumental in orchestrating this Barcelona midfield throughout the entirety of this season so far, with his vision, ball control and ability to dictate games being vital for Barcelona and pivotal to their success this season. But it was just the other day where I finally came to this realization. Wait, Pedri is not just been good this game. This guy's been good since what? 2020. For some reason it feels like Pedri's been around for an age, and he has, because he was a starter for Barcelona whilst being what, 18 years old. I vividly remember watching the Euros back in 2020, seeing Pedri line up for Spain every single game. This was coming off a season where again he played every single game for Barcelona in a time where they were struggling so deeply. And in them deep waters stood the likes of Pedri, who brought this Barcelona back to life, revitalizing them, and now look at them go. He's one of the main men in this Barcelona side, but constantly is overshadowed by the brilliance of their attack. And I'm a key example of this because I've overlooked Pedri for way too long. In the game against Atletico Madrid just the other day, Pedri was one of the key players that helped, recover the 2-0 deficit at the start of the game. Of course, the match ended 4-4 in the end, but, this guy, he can't go in goal. Or can he? I don't know. He was the guy that initiated the attack and fired up the Barcelona side to make that comeback, creating 5 chances in the game and also having 7 progressive carries of the ball, meaning that he was bringing that ball forward for Barcelona and initiating attacks, linking up the play. And he's not just good on the attacking front too, he's very solid when it comes to defensive pressures of the ball. An all-round 8 for Barcelona and one of the best midfielders in the world, overshadowed by the brilliance of, the Jude Bellinghams, just because his PR is better. And I know I've been a prosecutor of this crime too, talking about Jude Bellingham when Pedri has been level-headed with this guy since, I don't know, Bellingham came to Real Madrid. But unfortunately, Pedri has had injuries here and there, keeping him out of the side. But whenever I've seen him start and I've actually sat down and watched 90 minutes of Pedri, bro, this guy is world class. This season he's got 8 goals and 12 assists while also averaging 8 progressive passes per 90. And I feel like I just had to mention Pedri in this video because I don't watch a lot of Barcelona, week in and week out. But when I do, he's one of the main people that actually is orchestrating half of their moves in the game. And since his move from Las Palmas to Barcelona in 2019, again, he has been just a rock that has been ever still in this Barcelona side, slowly but surely just growing in mass. And I think by the end of this season, we might be talking about not only him being one of the best midfielders, but one of the best players in the world, especially if Barcelona achieve some trophies. Now on to another player who I have heard about, but I've been unfamiliar with their actual game. Matteo Retegui this season has been an absolute revelation for Atalanta, currently having the highest GA in the Serie A with 21 goals and 3 assists. The Argentinian-born Italian striker is thriving under Gasperini. He's slowly but surely turning into one of the most clinical strikers in football right now, and that might say a lot about strikers in football, but I did make a whole different video about that. But we have to pay the respect when the respect is due, because you don't just get to the top scorers of the Serie A just by being mediocre. You have to have some X factor about you, and I think one performance that kind of exemplifies that he has that X factor was the game between Atalanta and Juventus. He has been immense this season, and I think his play has been enhanced by the likes of Ademola Lookman and De Catalare, who have been either side of him, because not only does he linger around in the box, but he can drop deep, receive the ball and do link up play with his wingers. But you guys know me, I'm not too quick to gas up strikers. I need to see more of Retegui. He might be the top scorer this season, but I've seen it before. I've seen Piatek be the top scorer, or go on this amazing run of form in the Serie A and then just completely disappear off the face of the earth. I need to see a bit more from Retegui, do it in the big games that are in the Champions League, etc., which of course Atalanta are out, so better luck next season. Now next up in this video, a player that I genuinely had never heard of until this season. And maybe it goes to show that my ball knowledge isn't the best, but I did not really know anything about Morgan Rogers going into this season. But with it nearly being March now, I would probably get on my knees and beg Arsenal to buy a player like Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers has emerged as this dynamic force in this Aston Villa front line, playing as their number 10 or even an 8. And in 23 appearances this season, he's got 7 goals and 9 assists. This is one of the newer archetypes of creative midfielders in football, because he is not no scrawny little Spanish don. This is a brother with stature who can actually hold off the ball and bring it forwards whilst riding a few tackles. Averaging 4.8 shot creating actions per 90 and also averaging 3.2 dribbles per 90 as well. And again, this season he's just showing that he can do it all. He's someone that I really like because not only does he help out on the defensive, but he's good in the transition with, intricate passes and then following up with a goal. And I really hope we can see him develop in this Aston Villa squad, holding down a position for many more seasons to come, because he can be up there with one of the best creative midfielders in the league. And he is essential to the modern evolution of football because he's one of these few players that can actually carry the ball forwards. I think an amazing example of a performance that he also had that was brilliant is his game against Celtic in the Champions League, where I actually think he scored a hat-trick. Someone do the editor, do the fact checks on that. But I'm sure he had an amazing performance in the Champions League, and he's been having amazing performances all season. Now, the fourth player I got to talk about in this video is a man that I slandered in my video ranking every single right winger in football. I actually wrote him off going into this season, saying he was finished, a failed prospect. But no, right now as of making this video, Ousmane Dembele has the highest GA in Ligue 1. In 22 games he's got 16 goals and 10 assists, and week after week he's just getting better and better, and I think I know exactly why. Throughout the majority of his career, even when being at Dortmund to Barcelona, Dembele has always been a guy that thrives on being confident. If he gets that first take on successful in a game, Dembele is having a field day, but when he doesn't, he's a ghost. And suddenly it's like the world is now revolving around Dembele, because everything he touches is turning to gold, because his confidence is at an all-time peak. Each game he's going into, he's taking on players with ease. He knows that he can get past players. He knows how good he is. He knows that he's good on his left, he's good on his right, and he can put the ball into the box but also take a shot. He's at that point in his career, and this blossoming is happening at the perfect point. Dembele is transforming as a player in a classic way, like many classic players of the past have done too. The likes of Van Persie in the Premier League for Arsenal, who blossomed at the ripe age of 27, 28 and went on to be a world-class striker. This can happen for anyone, and I think it's showing in PSG's recent games, whether it's in the Champions League or in the league itself. He's averaging 9.7 progressive dribbles per 90. That's not normal. And to back up that stat even further, he's also averaging 6.2 final third entries too. So after these progressive dribbles, he's also entering the final third and creating chances for PSG. And right now in this side that has the likes of Barcola and Kavicha in this attacking line, Dembele is playing centrally. After the departure of Kolo Muani to Juventus, it opened up this gaping hole in Paris Saint-Germain's front line. And with the likes of Gonzalo Ramos being quite absent in this side, Dembele is relishing as kind of like a centre forward that also pops up on either side of the wings, because he can interchange, he can do it all. And I'm just so happy to see this happening for Dembele. This international break was not bad at all. It was actually quite good, because since the 16th of March when Arsenal played Chelsea, a lot has happened within football. But before we dive into the international break, we have to talk about a game that happened one day before it commenced, because it was like the entire world were watching Liverpool with hatred in their hearts take on Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final. In this game, Newcastle would win 2-1 with goals from Dan Burn and my striker Alexander Isak. These two being enough to stop Arne Slot's team on the day despite a late goal by Chiesa, with Alexander Isak again proving that he is one of the best strikers in the world on his day. The Swedish international would score a goal that almost looked instinctual before hitting his gruesome celebration, with this celebration being a clear sign that his ego is growing and the power level is rising. Because how can you just score against one of the best teams in the world this season and look at the defense and just pull out one of these? This is ultimate disrespect. And again, this is another one of these moments where Mohamed Salah has gone missing in a big game. Mo Salah turned into Mo Casper during this game because he was an absolute ghost. And again, there's murmurs of this being another instance of him hindering his chances at winning a Ballon d'Or. But this is not the reason why we had to talk about this game. My problem is not with the game itself. It's the fact that over, half the nation were hate watching Liverpool against Newcastle, mainly because they didn't want to see Liverpool win. How can you actually make fun of Liverpool losing in a final when all your clubs are finished in many different ways? Seeing other football fans laugh at Liverpool losing in a final is like if a set 8 kid in maths was to laugh at, a kid that is in top set for failing the higher paper. Bro, you're in set 8 maths and you're doing the foundation paper. Why are you even talking? And on the same day we saw Liverpool take on Newcastle, there was also another thriller between Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, with Lamine Yamal striking late on in the game to steal the victory for Barcelona. But they weren't done, because Ferran Torres also scored to make it 4-2 on the night. I mean, at this point, Barcelona are pretty much the only team that actually played better when going 2 goals down. Now, during the international break, we had the UEFA Nations League take place and also World Cup qualifiers, with games like Uzbekistan against Kyrgyzstan, Qatar against North Korea, Cape Verde against Mauritius, Sierra Leone against Guinea-Bissau. These are some of the matchups that we really dreamed of. But if we're being really honest, it was the UEFA Nations League that really stole the show. And these were not just any friendly games. These were quarterfinals of this competition. We saw Croatia go up against France, winning 2-0 with Modric laughing at Mbappe diving in the game. This team of Croatian pensioners would roll over France in this first leg. How could France with this squad even think about losing? Yet they did. It was a reality. They were really getting schooled by 40-year-old Modric. We also had Italy going up against Germany and losing 2-1. Tonali would score Italy's only goal in the game, with Germany winning 2-1, with the likes of Goretzka scoring. And from a clash of the Titans to Portugal facing off against Denmark. Looking at these two lineups, who do you think would have come out on top? Bruno Fernandes has been performing out of his skin. Nuno Mendes absolutely locked up Mohamed Salah. Ronaldo, the GOAT, at whatever age, it doesn't really matter. He was gonna, win against Denmark. But in this first leg, it would not go that way, because Højlund would score in the 78th minute and celebrate with Ronaldo's celebration. Man hit a Su in front of the GOAT, in front of Portuguese fans. This is crazy. At that point I would have exiled him on the pitch, but no. And the last quarterfinal first leg we would get would be the Netherlands going up against Spain, with this in my opinion being the best of the first legs. The score on the night would finish 2-2, with Nico Williams getting the first goal in the game, and he would really shine throughout the game despite Netherlands getting 2 back. But Nico Williams would still be there at the end of the game, creating opportunities. And in the dying embers of the game, he would create a second-hand chance that Mikel Merino would pounce upon and score, tying the game up at 2-2 in the 93rd minute. And just remember that these were the first legs of 2. During the international break, we would also see the Ballon d'Or power rankings, where we could, analyze who is most likely to win it this year. Rafinha topped the list, with the likes of Kylian Mbappe, Lamine Yamal and Harry Kane taking the top 4 spots. England would also take on Albania in one of their World Cup qualifiers, with this being a battle for English territory at this point, because the amount of Albanian people I see on a daily basis actually outweighs, English people. But despite the known threats of Albanians in England, they were put to the sword by Tuchel's newly formed England side. A stinky performance from Phil Foden, who continues to struggle this season, and the same old nonsense from Marcus Rashford too, just wasting our time watching him on that left-hand side. In better news, however, it was Miles Lewis-Skelly who scored the first goal during this Tuchel era, becoming England's youngest ever goal-scoring debutant. This guy has continued to perform at the standard that he has set at club level, and again replicated his form on the international stage for England. You also had Harry Kane, aka Mr. Inevitable, scoring his 70th goal in this game too, making England win 2-0 on the night despite quite a lackluster performance. And on the same day, we would see Brazil take on Colombia, with Vini Jr. seeming to find his spark in this game too, helping Brazil win 2-1 in the game, winning the penalty and then scoring the winning goal right at the depths of the game. However, in the grander scheme of things, this joy wouldn't last for long, because in the next game that Brazil would play, they would take on Argentina, the world champions, and in this game they would get absolutely smoked, again without the Argentinian Smurf. And going into this game, Rafinha made some bold comments about what Brazil were going to do to Argentina, but no, it did not turn out the way they believe, because life is not fairy tales. Football is not just a game. This is a reality too. When you come out and publicly say things like this, of course that is going to trigger a reaction from the people that you are targeting these words to. Just like the next time France come up against Argentina, because of some of the things that Argentina said to France, there will be this fuel brewing inside that will make them want to get this revenge against a team that did them so wrong. Like, come on man, how can Brazil be losing 4-1 to Argentina? Stand up for racism. Did you not see the comments that they said towards the French players? Does that not trigger you to do something about it? But no, these Brazilian players were put to the sword, bun the racism. They didn't care. They absolutely destroyed Brazil and could have scored about 7 in this game, with the likes of Vini Jr., Rafinha, Rodrigo, all ghosting in this game. The likes of the best players in the world were nowhere to be seen, with Brazil's only goal in the game coming via Cunha. Brazil have now not beaten Argentina since 2019. I don't even know what I was doing in 2019, but I know for a fact it was not good. And watching this entire game, it was like Brazil just had no midfield and no defense. And looking back at the lineup that they went out with, it's just evident to see why. The likes of Nottingham Forest Murillo, starting, getting thrown in the deep end against Argentina, side by side with Marquinhos, a guy that time and time again hasn't been a leader for this Brazilian side. I've said it in a video before where PSG lost against Newcastle. In my opinion, Marquinhos has had his hand held throughout the majority of his career by Thiago Silva. And due to Thiago Silva not being in this squad anymore, you're seeing Marquinhos get exposed time and time again. What did you really expect with this midfield? The likes of Joe Linton going up against McAllister, Enzo Fernandez and De Paul. And this bulky guy would just get ran rings about by the Argentinian midfielders, the Smurfs. But yeah, it's clear to see that we are living through probably the worst era of Brazilian football. And I saw Neymar, go up against many teams with the likes of Joe up top, but Neymar was able to carry Brazil forward for how many years? Just imagine if he had decent players. The football world would also receive news that Modric wants to extend his contract at Real Madrid. You are too old for this, bro. You want to stay another year at Real Madrid. And if I'm being real with you, Modric, put the bandana in the bag, bro. Put the career in the bag. No more games. But this news is pretty positive for Real Madrid because, again, Modric is someone that you probably need in the dressing room for another year before the midfielders actually become seniors in the side. And of course, Modric probably wants to play at his last World Cup, which would be in a year. Thiago Motta was also finally sacked of his duties at Juventus. After getting knocked out by PSV and then seeing them get absolutely obliterated by Arsenal with the likes of Sterling up top, put their whole career in the bag. Stop being a manager. Motta was swiftly replaced by Igor Tudor, a man that many fans of the early 2000s would remember. A former Juventus defender, former Croatian player of the year, also, a former assistant coach when Andrea Pirlo was manager at Juventus. And also, he's managed the likes of Hellas Verona, Lazio, and has, knows the squad in that Juventus side. And this is no joke of a player. This is a guy that shared the dressing room with the likes of Zinedine Zidane, Edgar Davids, Antonio Conte, and stood his ground as a centre-back during the early 2000s. And he also stands at like 6'6", so these guys gotta listen to him. And now let's take it back to the UEFA Nations League and find out how all these quarterfinals actually finished. In the second leg between France and Croatia, France would actually win 2-0 with Olise scoring a beautiful goal from a direct free kick in the game. He became the first French player to score from a direct free kick since Pogba in 2018. Dembele would also continue his fine form in football by scoring in this game as well, and the game would go down to penalties where France would take the win. In the game between Germany and Italy, it would finish 3-3 in an absolute blockbuster of a game, with Germany winning 5-4 on aggregate, with the likes of Kimmich, Musiala and Kleinstein putting Germany 3-0 up before Italy got 3 back themselves, with Moise Kean replicating his form in the Serie A to the international stage, scoring 2 in the game. But I think the moment that everyone was talking about during this game was Musiala's goal, because Germany would recreate that corner taken quickly moment with Kimmich quickly taking a corner and Musiala finishing into an empty net. And despite Italy nearly causing an upset in this game, I think the best player on this pitch by a mile was Joshua Kimmich. And during this entire tie between Germany and Italy as a whole, Kimmich would actually get 4 assists and a goal too. So he pretty much single-handedly kind of decided this entire tie himself. The second leg between Portugal and Denmark would also be an absolute frenzy of a game, with them winning 5-2 on the night, putting them at 5-3 on aggregate, overturning this 1-0 loss from the first leg. In this game, Cristiano Ronaldo would hit back at Rasmus Højlund by scoring a goal of his own and hitting his iconic celebration. But it was actually Christian Eriksen that would scare the Portuguese supporters, because his goal in the 76th minute would put Denmark 3-2 up on aggregate with 14 minutes left of this game. But one man would come off the bench and change the entire fate of this game. Francisco Trincao would score in the 86th minute to tie up the game. And in extra time he would score again, with Gonzalo Ramos putting the cherry on top of the cake. Also, Ronaldo would miss another penalty. Someone please take the ball off this old man. You know, we don't want to see you taking penalties no more. You're done. Put the penalties in the bag. And finally, in the second leg between Spain and the Netherlands, it would end 3-3. 5-5 on aggregate, with Spain winning on penalties. And this game had it all. You know, pundits criticizing the players that were about to play, with Van der Vaart, former Tottenham player, you know, commenting about Lamine Yamal, and Lamine Yamal responding in the game by scoring in extra time, with there being 3 penalties in the actual game before going to a penalty shootout, where it would then go to sudden death with the likes of Noah Lang missing and Lamine Yamal. And who else to seal the win for Spain than Pedri, who stepped up, so the final penalty in this game slotted it away, and Spain would then be advancing to a semi-final. And I think this game again is just proof that not only is Pedri crucial to Spain, but he's crucial to Barcelona too. And again, Lamine Yamal is just out of this world. He has 4 goals and 8 assists under De La Fuente at Spain, more than any other player. And it's not even like this side solely relies on him. He's just playing at his absolute best. England would also take on Latvia in their other World Cup qualifier, winning 3-0, with Reece James scoring from a direct free kick. You know, is he back? Is one of the best right backs in the league back? I don't think so. There was also a bit of tension and drama in one of the UEFA Nations League qualifiers too, between Hungary and Turkey. Because in this game, Turkey would beat Hungary 3-0 and Arda Güler would shush Dominik Szoboszlai. And due to this disrespectful action that Arda Güler did towards Szoboszlai, he took it to Instagram, where he would comment 1088. Quoting Arda Güler's time that he spent on a pitch this season. Arda Güler would then respond to Szoboszlai saying that he's a joke, and in my opinion, not only is this so stupid, but the game is absolutely back. This is what we want. Rivalries. On, off, everywhere. These are the moments that we live for. On pitch trolling, shushing your opponent for him to get triggered enough to comment on Instagram. Bro, why didn't you comment on the pitch? This is some DT versus Goldbridge type beef. KSI versus Speed type beef. We need to make this a reality. I need to see Real Madrid against Liverpool. During the break, we would also hear breaking news that Trent Alexander-Arnold has agreed a move to Real Madrid. And in my opinion, this is an absolutely generational move. This could change the course of football itself, because this is a right back who had the Premier League at his fingertips, and you see his impact on this Liverpool side when he's missing. Look at the likes of Salah, who hasn't performed at the best of his abilities when Trent has been, absent in the side. And from winning the Premier League, the Champions League with Liverpool, he's challenging himself to do it for a club that's even bigger. And of course, with this news, abuse, hatred has just flooded in, and in my opinion, again, this is just crazy. Fans of Liverpool switching up on a boyhood hero who has pretty much won everything for your club for leaving is crazy, and you need to really humble yourself, because your right back that you're going to bring in after Trent never be the same again. This is one of the best output players in Premier League history, especially in the modern history. And of course I get that people are saying, but he left on a free, he could have gone for money in January, but that was not his choice. Liverpool refused to sell, and also he was a player that was brought in for free because he's a boyhood player, so it's not like you're losing money. But finally, despite the international break being so, fun this time around, there was still injuries. Alphonso Davies getting injured, Ryan Gravenberch getting injured. This is why the international break is not as good as it seems, because these players are getting overloaded. Now, since moving to Real Betis on loan from Manchester United back in January, Antony has come into the light. This man has been baptized into football again, and he is making an impact. In 13 La Liga games, he's got 4 goals and 2 assists. But it's not just La Liga where he's been helping Real Betis out. It's in the Conference League too, as he's got 4 goals and 3 assists in that competition alone. He has helped his new side get so close to silverware this season. And honestly, let's just talk about his performance against Fiorentina in the Conference League semi-final. Because not only would Antony be a threat on the wing, but he would also score a stunning free kick in the game to really spur Real Betis through to a final. And not just any final, their first European final. This is a guy who constantly, for the last year, has been put under scrutiny by not only Man United fans, but football fans in general. Yet the 25-year-old Brazilian has been able to completely transform his entire career and trajectory of it too. We don't know whether he will make that move permanent and stay at Real Betis, or go back to Manchester United and try to make an impact there, because environments have changed. No longer is Antony being drowned by the limelight at Manchester United. He's now balling in Seville with a bit of freedom and not all the scrutiny that he would be getting week in and week out playing for one of the most famous teams in the world. And I think that's what really makes Antony one of the best underrated wingers in football, because he's not doing it for the biggest club in the game right now, but he's still a really big threat. In the little bits that I've seen him play this season, he has been his more direct self, actually taking on his defender and showing trickery. Even, in a game between Real Madrid, he was a big threat. Him and the likes of Isco are just linking up perfectly, and we're seeing shades of Antony from Ajax, where he was not just a robotic winger but quite a dynamic one. But yeah, I'm hoping for the best for Antony, and I think we all are, if I'm being honest. Now, from a Premier League winger that is playing overseas to a Premier League winger that is playing in the Premier League, we need to talk about Jarrod Bowen, because I don't know how many seasons this guy has been putting up consistent numbers in the Premier League, but ever since making that move to West Ham, he's been a constant threat. Some of the goals in his catalogue have been absolutely outrageous during his entire time at West Ham, and even in their seasons where they've struggled. Even this season, he still showed up with 11 goals, 9 assists in the league. With goals against the likes of Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal. He scored 2 against Manchester United this season. This guy doesn't really care. He can be technical and, take on a defender and also slot it in. And he can also take you down the line. Jarrod Bowen constantly is one of these players that just gets completely overlooked, yet he puts up consistent numbers year in and year out. It doesn't make sense. He can be utilized in all the front 3 positions and even drop in as a 10. He's fluid, relentless, and has a work rate of a player that is playing for a lesser team. He is going to press the defense. And again, he is one of the most underrated wingers in the league by everyone, but of course West Ham fans, because if you're a West Ham fan watching this, you know how much Jarrod Bowen means to your club. And whilst we're speaking about one English winger, we might as well talk about another that is 8 years younger than Jarrod Bowen. And his name is Jamie Gittens of Borussia Dortmund. Now, this is a 20-year-old winger that I previously spoke about at the start of the season. And honestly, it hasn't been the best numbers-wise for Gittens, but if I'm talking about performances, if I'm talking about coming off the bench and making an impact, Gittens is the guy. Because at 20 years old, he's provided Dortmund with 12 goals and 5 assists in all competitions. And he kicked off this campaign brilliantly, scoring 2 goals in the first game against Frankfurt. He's also scored against the likes of Bayern Munich this season and Leverkusen. And again, he's just this flary winger that is doing it at a club in a foreign country. Similar to the way Jadon Sancho made a move from Manchester City to Dortmund, Gittens followed in his footsteps from Manchester City to to Dortmund as well. And slowly but surely, with more game time and more experience, Gittins looks like he's on the edge of becoming one of the best wingers in football. He just needs more time. I've seen performances against the likes of, Club Brugge in the Champions League, where he scored 2. He also scored a goal against Real Madrid in the Champions League too, and he is one of the most underrated wingers in football right now. And whilst I'm on this topic of age, let's talk about a winger that looks like he's about 23, but is actually 27. Even since about 2 years ago, Kaoru Mitoma was one of the front runners as the wingers that were carrying this new era forward, despite being one of the older wingers in the list. I remember he was constantly in conversations with the likes of Kavicha Kvaratskhelia and Rafael Leao as one of these wingers that is actually entertaining to watch. And if you're wondering who mentioned him next to these two great players, it was me. Look at the likes of Mitoma, Kavicha Kvaratskhelia, Rafael Leao, Vini Jr. All these players still exist. They're still playing. So real wingers are not dead. Now, Kaoru Mitoma is a left winger of Brighton Hove Albion in the Premier League. And this guy is one of the best 1v1 wingers in football, and full stop. That's it. And he's one of these wingers that has a goal catalogue to die for. For the last 3 years, he's just been balling. For the last year, he's been balling. And you just see these little moments of individual brilliance, like his goal against Chelsea when Brighton won 3-0 this season. He is one of the best first touches in the Premier League, and an amazing ability to go from 0 to 100 in a 1v1 take-on scenario. He also can adapt well to play defensively and has been used as a wing-back before under Graham Potter at Brighton. And even since Brighton have gone through so many transitions with players coming and going, Mitoma has been a constant that has offered you attack and defense to die for. This season he's put up 10 goals and 3 assists in all competitions, and again, he is not one of these players that you can really look at the stats and say, this is how good Kaoru Mitoma is. It's his in-game ability to just dictate the play. And if I'm being honest, while I've been speaking about Kaoru Mitoma, it's opened up this bigger topic of all the underrated wingers that are in the Premier League right now. Bryan Mbeumo is a winger that is playing for Brentford and has got 18 goals and 8 assists this season. For Brentford. I only heard that Brentford existed last year. I didn't even know that this was an area in London. Ever since the departure of Ivan Toney, this guy just stepped in like I've been here all along. Even though I look 32. Completely bold. I'm 25 and I still got promise. You've also got Newcastle. Anthony Gordon on the left-hand side that, again, when I see him press, I'm impressed because he shows that aggressiveness that someone like a Martinelli of Arsenal doesn't have. The willingness to go and get the ball back. And he also puts up some decent goals and assist numbers. You've also on the other side got Jacob Murphy, who's been, a creative hub for Newcastle this season. And despite him being at the back end of his career at Newcastle, and they could probably improve on that side, he's given you steady numbers and he's given you performances. In the Prem, we've also got a Noni Madueke. And despite Chelsea being, a bit topsy-turvy, shaky, Noni is, again, one of these 1v1 specialists that has one of the worst end products ever. But again, with time and consistency, he can be there doing it on a weekly basis. Manchester United also have Amad Diallo, who is just recently coming back from injury and taking over the games. I saw him the other day in his cameo against Athletic Club in the Europa League, where Manchester United won 4-1. I saw the way he was playing, with fluidity, taking on the man, aggressiveness, directness. That's what Man United need. That's a real winger. Savio, underrated season with some decent numbers. This guy is 21 and this is his first season in the Premier League, and he's provided Manchester City with 10 assists. And they've also got Jeremy Doku, someone that I once claimed to be the second coming of Ronaldinho. Maybe I went a bit overboard there. But Doku was up there with the likes of Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams for, attempted take-ons, with a 45% successful take-on rate. And this guy is constantly, abusing wing-backs in the league. It doesn't really matter if he comes on for 5 minutes or if he starts the game. He's going to terrorize the wings of the pitch. But let's just calm down with this Premier League glaze. Premier League heads, all they talk about Premier League, Premier League, Premier League, Premier League. Well, Ligue 1, French League. They have some wingers too.
All in France is PSG. The rest is finished.
Let's talk about the next winger. And honestly, this next winger that you guys have begged me to talk about, in my opinion, is not a winger. Ryan Cherki of Lyon could be one of the best 10s in football. And what I mean by 10 is an attacking midfielder. I don't think he is going to be a right winger. I think you need more dynamism on the flanks of the pitch. But going forward, if he just takes up more of a central position, he could be utilized even more. This season for Lyon, he's got 12 goals and 19 assists in all competitions, being honestly a beacon of their creativity all season long. He's one of these players that can just pull out a bit of trickery. We saw cameos, against Manchester United in the Europa League, where everyone was watching him finally. But throughout the entire season, he's put up very solid performances. And my favourite of his this season had to be against Rangers in the Europa League, where this was probably my first time really watching him for him. And he pulled out 2 assists and was just pulling the strings like a puppet master. He was just playing about with the team. Lyon would win the game 4-1, but again, he was my man of the match. And in the group stage of the Europa League, he did the same thing to Frankfurt, where he scored 1 and got 2 assists again. Let's talk about the next winger, Rafael Leao. How could I not even really mention him in the proper video to this? What's going on? Milan, in my opinion, haven't been the best this season, but Leao has still given you numbers. The 25-year-old has his entire career ahead of him. And, he does other things with his career. He has clothing. He also makes music. So, of course, maybe he wanted to just take a year off being one of the best wingers in world football. That's what I think it is. I think he just had a little chill year, gap year, but he's going to come back stronger next year. This season, he's given AC Milan 12 goals and 13 assists in all competitions. But there have been constant question marks that have been dangled in front of his head, because in a lot of the big games that AC Milan have played this season, he's not really been a force to be reckoned with like previous years, because he's someone that has always risen to occasions. Where there is a known defender in front of him, he will put a smile on his face and take them down the line time and time again. And whilst we're chilling in Serie A in Italy with Milan, let's talk about, Kenan Yildiz. Obviously, we can't stay in Milan, we're in Turin now, but Kenan Yildiz has been good too. He scored a humble 6 goals and got 3 assists in the league this season, but I think the performance that really made me think, okay, cool, this guy has what it takes, was when Inter and Juve drew 4-4 and Yildiz got 2 goals in the game. And the finishes, we need more of this. If he can just become more clinical and can master the art of finishing, he can be one of the best wingers in football. Now, the Champions League this season has exceeded all expectations that we had going into it. From the reformatting of the competition, going from a group stage to a league phase with 36 teams, we saw big changes going into it this season. And with a final between Inter Milan and PSG on the horizon, I thought we have to talk about what the hell happened to the Champions League this season and how did it just completely break football. Going into the competition this year, there was already outrage. People were making up a fuss because footballers that get paid 100 grand a week were going to be playing more games. Shut the hell up. Let them play the games. I don't even care. Play the games. We scrapped the old rulebook. We threw it in some fire. No more group stages. Boring. Let's make it an entire table. Let's change this like it's some sort of career mode special, and you put all the best teams from all the top 5 European leagues into one league. This is what it was like. I already knew it was going to be fun. And to see people that were just already outraged. Bro, you're acting like you're playing in the Champions League yourself. You're not playing. You're tweeting. Yeah? That's why I don't have Twitter. Don't follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. And after it had already kicked off, we were seeing exciting performances, like AC Milan getting an upset over Real Madrid early into the competition. Who would have thought Milan could beat Real Madrid? I didn't. But when I really think about it, it was Perez coming up against probably the Mafia. So the Mafia probably, threatened Perez's family. And that's why AC Milan won this game. Goals from the likes of Alvaro Morata and Reinders were enough to topple over Real Madrid, despite Vinny Jr. scoring a penalty in the game. We also had Sporting's demolition of Manchester City, which honestly, this was a part of the triggering of the downfall of Man City's season. And despite them, having a downfall and crashing out the entire competition, look at them in the league. Look at them in the league. Let's just look at them in the league. Yeah, that's not even funny. How did they even get back here? Amorim had a thriving Sporting side that had just destroyed Manchester City, and picked up and left and went to go do a relegation battle in the Premier League. Gyökeres scored a hat-trick in this game, and honestly, he looked unstoppable. And Haaland also missed the penalty in the game too, which kind of showed this weird contrast between the two strikers at the time of this game. Manchester City also lost to PSG in the league phase after actually leading the game. PSG decided to sit forward in the second half and absolutely obliterated them, with their wingers being on show. You know, Barcola doing things, Dembele skinning people, and again PSG showing what they would show throughout the entire competition. Liverpool also had big performances in the league stage, winning against Real Madrid with this tackle by Conor Bradley absolutely going viral. You know, where he 2-foot tackled Kylian Mbappe and left him upside down. They would beat last year's Champions League winners and then go on to beat Bayer Leverkusen 4-0, with Diaz scoring a hat-trick in the game. And honestly, it was like everything was going Liverpool's way during this time in the year. And I can name so many more games that happened during this league phase that was just so exciting. There were just games after games that we would not see have any joy in a group stage, yet they were played out and it was enjoyable to see. And at the end of the league phase, it was Liverpool at the top that were looking like the favourites for the entire competition. The top 8 in the league phase would go straight through into the knockout rounds, but now it was time for the mid-table battle. Now the teams that were ranked 9th to 24th had to play against each other in order to reach the knockout stages of the competition, with the likes of Dortmund facing off against Sporting, with Sergio Guirassy again showing that he is one of the most prolific goal scorers not only in the competition but in world football at the time. PSG also took on Brest, and we saw viral moments not only from, you know, CBS.
As we all know on this show, we all love a bit of Brest.
We saw everything. The coverage during Brest's time in the Champions League was crazy, and you know, it's all because of their name. It's pretty funny, to be fair. PSG actually won like 10-0 on aggregate in the tie. You know, Brest were not supposed to be there. They were not supposed to be handled this way. Real Madrid also matched up against Manchester City in a 2-legged tie, and honestly, this was absolute cinema. This was when I thought we were going to see some sort of historic campaign from Mbappe, because even when Real Madrid won 3-2, you had Mbappe scoring, you had Bellingham scoring. It was crazy. It was a battle for the ages, and again in the second leg, Mbappe would turn up and absolutely leave Guardiola just on the floor chilling. We also had upsets with PSV knocking out Juventus. You know, it was just drama all over this game, with Feyenoord also knocking out AC Milan and also their former player that they just sold to Milan in the January window. It was mad. Club Brugge also upset Atalanta, who won the Europa League last season. Come on, this is a team of frauds. How could you do this, losing to Club Brugge? Benfica would beat Monaco over the 2 legs, and Bayern Munich would honestly struggle to get past Celtic. I was rooting for Celtic, Shinsuke Nakamura for life. And then after being bombarded with these ties that meant so much to the clubs that didn't finish in the top 8, it was time for the real round of 16. And it was just chaos as usual. Even in a game between Barcelona and Benfica, there was goals galore. It was not as boring as it usually would be. We all thought, okay, Barcelona's going to go through. But no, Benfica, they were putting up a fight. Bayern Munich were pitted against the odds against Leverkusen, with people actually predicting that Xabi Alonso would get the better of company. But no, Harry Kane turned up in the game and showed who's the little bro in this league, and now in the Champions League too. And this is the stage where we saw PSG come up against Liverpool, and again, where we really saw that these were a group of players that had completely reformed their season. The incoming of Kvaratskhelia in January had just completely transformed this team, whilst also the repositioning of Dembele. And in the first leg, the PSG players would bombard Liverpool, creating chances and opportunities to really put Liverpool to bed. And despite getting a goal in the game, it would actually be Harvey Elliott that would save Liverpool. But then the second leg happened. PSG forced it all the way to penalties and won on penalties. And from a footballing perspective, going into this tie, there's not one person that would have said, oh, PSG were going to do this to Liverpool. Because despite only marginally winning on penalties, their performance was out of this world and very dominant when it comes to, you know, just pushing Liverpool to the side. We'd also get drama in a rivalry between Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid that will be played out in this round too. Rodrigo turning up in the first leg, but Atletico in the second leg, they were not letting things die. Simeone's men, against all odds, were hanging on to the very end, and it got all the way to penalties. And then we had a controversial penalty by Julian Alvarez that, was double touched and went over the bar, and Rudiger scores, and they do this whole crazy celebration, and Real Madrid are looking like they are gonna, scam their way all the way to the final and get it done. Arsenal would also absolutely roll over PSV, with even the likes of Raheem Sterling getting in on the action. If Raheem Sterling scored against you, your team should not even be in this competition. You need to go back down to the Conference League. PSV, I don't even know how this happened to you. And of course, we had the quarterfinals, where I literally made videos about everything that happened. Real Madrid coming up against Arsenal, and Arsenal upsetting them. We get it. Arsenal won against Real Madrid. They will never do anything else like this again. And they didn't still win a trophy this season, so I don't care anymore. Barcelona would continue to keep people on their toes by scoring goals, but also, conceding goals, with the likes of Guirassy scoring a hat-trick, in the second leg and still losing. What's going on? Bayern and Inter would fight it out, with Inter Milan coming out on top, with everyone talking about the Fratesi goal in the first leg that was aligned with a goal that was scored by, another Inter Milan player at the exact same time a few seasons back. PSG would play about with Aston Villa before Aston Villa would forge a comeback in the second leg. Prince William was watching. It looked like some sort of movie. And then the semi-finals, we had Arsenal versus PSG and Inter versus Barcelona, which honestly were both as entertaining as each other. That's a complete lie. The Barcelona-Inter game was one of the best ties we have seen in recent history, and maybe all time. You had Acerbi scoring in the last, the dying embers of the second leg to lead Inter Milan into the extra time that they needed. Honestly, this entire campaign has been absolutely crazy, with moments that you can't even put into words. You just had to be there and watch. With Arsenal losing to PSG in both legs, despite, people actually thinking that Arsenal were the favourites going into the final four. And now we head into a final between PSG and Inter. Two sides that nobody really predicted to be in the final together, but it happened. And right now it's two different styles of play going up against each other in the final, with Luis Enrique coming in with a story of, a daughter that passed away, and him being a previous treble winner with Barcelona, and this newly reformed team of PSG stars that he's been able to humble and reform, going up against Inter Milan, who have a warrior-like mindset. Inzaghi and his men, Lautaro Martinez with everything to prove, a guy that has not shown up in big games. It all will come down into one game on the 31st of May. Now, I've already made an entire video talking about the Champions League campaign itself this season. So in this video, let's just talk about what went down in the final. Now, believe it or not, this was the first time these two sides had faced each other in history. This had not happened before. PSG were seeking their first ever Champions League trophy, having been heartbroken before losing with the likes of Mbappe and Neymar in the squad. And Inter were trying to salvage a season that had been bottled so far, losing the league to Napoli. And instantly when these players walked out, I knew it was not going to be Inter's day, because they decided to walk out looking like some bananas. They had already lost the battle of fashion in the first 5 seconds of the match. So who had any faith that they were actually going to win the battle when it came to football? Because you guys know my rule. If you look good, then you feel good. And if you feel good, then you play good. And immediately after the kickoff, it was these PSG players that were playing good. A fast start from PSG leading to immediate pressure that they would actually sustain throughout the entire 90 minutes. And it wouldn't be very long for PSG to score the opener in the final, with Desiree Doué receiving the ball on the half turn before casually passing the ball across the box and Hakimi finishing it off. Now, this goal happened so fast that I didn't even have time to celebrate. I thought the goal looked offside. But no, after watching the replays back, it was just the fact that these Inter Milan players had been frozen in time. And Hakimi would make it 1-0 against Inter Milan, a side that he actually played for. And you can't tell me that all of you remembered that Hakimi once played for Inter Milan. This would be his third goal in the knockout stage of the Champions League. And this guy is a right back. That's not normal. And after this first goal went in, these PSG players did not take their foot off the pedal because they kept up with this pressure. Inter Milan would constantly try to play the ball out of the back, but no, they would immediately get suffocated by the PSG players. And one that really stood out on the night was Desiree Doué, who would get the second goal in the game and his second goal contribution in the 90 minutes. His shot going past Sommer thanks to a deflection off DeMarco. These Inter Milan players couldn't even get out of their own half, let alone get a shot on target. And going into this second half, PSG had 12 shots in comparison to Inter's 2, completely dominating in every facet of the game, from possession to pressure applied to the ball to just creating opportunities and being everywhere on the pitch. Dembele dropping in deep but also applying pressure to the Inter Milan defense. And in the 63rd minute we would see the most beautiful goal in the game, with Doué scoring his second on the night, but the entire flow of the game looking like a symphony of beautiful jazz. PSG setting off on a transition with the ball rolling towards Dembele. He does a backheel flick into the path of Vitinha. Vitinha, a player who had been controlling the entire flow of the game since the start. Something like Pinocchio and his master, he was pulling all of the strings. And Vitinha would receive this ball seamlessly before driving towards the Inter Milan defense. You're watching the TV and you're saying, pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball. And he picks the perfect moment and the perfect weight of pass to put it into the path of Desiree Doué, aka this year's golden boy. And this is what separates Doué from most common wingers in football, because he did not need to take a touch. First time he finishes the ball into the near post and it just curves round a Sommer that looks helpless in goal. I know for a fact 9 out of 10 wingers in football right now would have taken a touch and would have got clamped in this situation. Yet in a final, to make it 3-0, a 19-year-old has just done it and shown the world who he is. And these Paris Saint-Germain players would not stop, with Inter Milan's defense being torn open again via a Dembele pass that broke the lines, setting Kavica into a 1v1 scenario with Jan Sommer. And what does he do? One of the best left wingers in football right now was never going to miss. He gives the keeper the eyes and sends it to the near post with ease. And with it now being 4-0, I started to feel sorry for these Inter Milan players. But Luis Enrique didn't. He brings on new reinforcements, swapping Doué for Barcola, another world-class winger. And he comes on and shows mercy. He actually spared the Inter Milan defense by missing, quite a big opportunity to make it 5-0. But another youngster came onto the pitch as well, and he didn't show any mercy. Because in the 86th minute, Seni Mayulu, via a pass from Barcola, would be in front of the goal and smash it into the back of the net, making it 5-0 and the most dominant Champions League final performance that we had ever seen in the history of this competition. Yes, this scoreline had never been seen in the competition's history, and PSG didn't just win a Champions League. They just secured themselves a treble that coincides with their first ever Champions League in their club's history. What a night for PSG fans, and what a night for football, if I'm being honest. Luis Enrique has just put his name up there as one of the best managers in football. He successfully got rid of any ego within this squad and created, some sort of harmonic community that have just won the Champions League. Because this was the youngest squad in the competition itself, taking down a bunch of olders. Now, within every team in football, there's a man behind the magic. A guy pulling all the strings on the tactical board, making big decisions, setting up his team, and ultimately being the sole reason behind most of their success. So let's talk about some of the best managers of the season. And first up, we've got to give Arne Slot some credit where credit's due. Because in his debut season, having been handed the keys by Jurgen Klopp, he has led Liverpool to a Premier League title. And not just any Premier League title, their 20th. Matching Manchester United's record and firmly stamping themselves as England's best team currently. His structural and tactical approach completely revitalized this team, boasting a win percentage of over 63% and averaging over 2.08 points per game. Let's not also forget that during the start of this season, this guy was dominating in all competitions, blazing through the Premier League but also dominating in the league phase of the Champions League, beating the likes of Real Madrid and Bayer Leverkusen and really strutting his stuff tactically when it comes to the European stage. Unfortunately, his side was toppled over by PSG in the Champions League, but if we're being honest, Liverpool had a bunch of chances throughout both of the legs. And then looking at the wider landscape, out of all the teams in the Champions League that really gave PSG a run for their money, it was, the Liverpools, the Aston Villas that actually put up a fight. Liverpool would take PSG all the way to penalties, something that the other sides that they faced couldn't do. And while Arne Slot's success with Liverpool has to be talked about, Antonio Conte, let's talk about his Napoli side, because Conte took over at Napoli and won them a Scudetto just like that, becoming the first manager in the league to win the title with 3 different Italian clubs. His leadership transformed some of the most mediocre players seen worldwide. The likes of Scott McTominay completely leveled up, Billy Gilmore, Lukaku. These are guys that were seen as flops in the Premier League but completely shone under his managerial constructs, beating out the likes of Inter Milan that were favourites going into this season. Hansi Flick with Barcelona also did his thing, reviving Barcelona with this attacking, fluid play and continuing the nurturing of Barcelona's young players. He had huge wins this season against the likes of Real Madrid, and again, it was this new style of play that Barcelona haven't really utilised ever in their history, helping them win La Liga but ultimately falling short where it really mattered in the Champions League. Vincent Kompany also had an amazing campaign this season, restoring Bayern's dominance. And I think this is completely getting overlooked because this guy bounced back with his Bayern squad. After being manhandled by Xavi Alonso last season, Kompany said, you know what, I'm gonna stay in this job and show them why I'm a manager that needs to be talked about more often. Me and my large cranium head. And he dug into his head and thought of new ways that he could approach the season, winning the Bundesliga with a blend of youth and experience, making bold decisions and injecting younger players into a squad that was aging, telling the likes of Michael Olise, you go start right wing, Pavlovic, you start in the middle, trusting the youth. We also can't forget to mention Nuno Espirito Santos, leading Nottingham Forest very deep into the season in a position that we couldn't really predict. His Nottingham Forest side finished top 5, defying all odds, and at one point in the season they were even challenging Arsenal to be second. And of course things will happen, players' form will dip and the squad isn't the most luxurious and valuable, yet he did a really good job to even have them in this position, because I know a bunch of people that predicted them to get relegated. So applaud this guy. And of course there's a bunch of other managers that did great things this season. I think Enzo Maresca did quite a good job. I think Eddie Howe did quite a good job. But in terms of the pinnacle of managers this season, you can't forget Luis Enrique, guiding PSG to a treble or quadruple, whatever you want to call it, and really grabbing this PSG side by the collar and saying, you are going to listen to me and we are going to win big things this season, winning them their first Champions League in their history and etching his name in folklore. So in my opinion, based off that fact alone, it probably should be Enrique that gets the Manager of the Year award. Now our next category is Best Young Player, aka the next generation. These are the young players that are breaking all boundaries, putting their name up there with some of the best players in world football. Players that have the raw ability and are doing it on a weekly basis. This is the award for a player that is going to lead the next generation. And of course, each of the players have to be under the age of 23. Now, Lamine Yamal is the first youngster that I have on this list. But if I'm being honest, this guy is in a category of his own. At this point, at 17 years old, he's shown so much talent that you really can't even compare him to his age mates. Doing it at club level, on a European stage and international stage too. There is nothing that this guy is doing that is not comparable to players that are already established and world class. He's in that category. I'm not putting him in a category that is talking about the next generation when he is the generation. So out of respect for the things that he's achieved this season, he's not even going to be, talked about for this category. Ryan Gravenberch, however, is someone that is born in 2002 and completely held down the Liverpool midfield for a lot of the season. Because when the likes of Dominic Szoboszlai and McAllister were going through rough patches here and there with inconsistency, week in and week out it was Gravenberch putting in solid performances, and despite people saying, oh, if he comes up against a real midfield he'd be outplayed, constantly he was, disapproving this rumor that was put on his head. The silky ability to get out of trouble, he shows traits that are of an elite standard, constantly scanning and being one step ahead when players are trying to press. And I think towards the end of the season his form may have dipped, but if I'm being honest, if you ask a Liverpool fan who was their best midfielder throughout the entire season, it would have to be Gravenberch. And you can't just not talk about a midfielder that won the Premier League and was completely dominant. Ryan Cherki is another one of these young players that is really making a name for himself in football right now, coming off an amazing performance in literally the UEFA Nations League just the other day, scoring and assisting against Spain, proving that he can go toe to toe with the very best. And with rumours of a move to Manchester City, things are only going to get better, because despite people saying that he's going to be overcoached by Pep Guardiola, nah, this ain't happening. Cherki is not someone that is going to be overcoached. He is going to be given creative control, and Guardiola likes these guys. Messi, come on, he was given creative control. He was a bit tubby, he had a couple double chins, and he was balling back in 2011. Ryan Cherki has everything that it takes to be the very best, and at club level this season he proved it too, getting over 19 assists in the league. And on a European stage we even saw cameos against the likes of Manchester United and Rangers, Frankfurt, where he was just dictating the games with ease. Alongside his creative brilliance, you also have Florian Wirtz, who's been doing it. Yeah, 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Nobody even talks about him because he's in the Bundesliga, because he's not playing for the best team in the Bundesliga. You ain't watching full games, you ain't even watching highlights. But Florian Wirtz continued his rise this season as a 22-year-old, getting 16 goals and 15 assists in all competitions. And again, he's another one of these creative young midfielders that is rumoured to make a big move. Making a move to Liverpool could completely explode his career. Miles Lewis-Skelly also needs to be given a shout, and despite getting 3 red cards, having a bit of a temper, he really shored up Arsenal's defence when they were going through some sticky spells, with the likes of Gabriel going down and the left back position looking quite uncertain with Calafiori in and out of the side. Miles Lewis-Skelly, what an 18-year-old, just went and manhandled players with ease, locking up the likes of Rodrigo in the Champions League and showing out. You've also got João Neves of PSG, who is less than 20 years old and a brick wall in that PSG side, able to progress the play forward but also help out on the defensive end. I also nearly forgot to mention Desiree Doué as well, who again had an outstanding season, being one of the best wingers in football right now, putting his name up there with the likes of Lamine Yamal, reaching for the top. Of course, I don't think he's at the same level just yet, but with time he's going to be one of the best. But I think out of all these players, the one that has the highest ceiling and the one that probably wins the Young Player of the Year, Ryan Cherki. Give it up for that brother. If we ban burgers from this guy's life, he is going to be one of the best players, and it is easy to see. It's obvious because North African genetics is already overpowered. Now, from the best young players of the year, players that are looking to lead the next generation, to players that are leading the era that we're in, let's talk about this year's Player of the Year. Because without these individuals, their teams wouldn't be the same, their nations wouldn't be the same, and they impact whenever they play. A player that doesn't hide from the opposition, a player that can go toe to toe with any individual on a football pitch. This is the cream of the crop, the highest of peaks, the warrior at the top, the one going first into battle. These are the best players of this season. And first off, as always with a lot of these categories, let's talk about a Liverpool player that completely destroyed the Premier League with ease this season. Now, people can constantly argue with a brick wall about the fact that this guy doesn't look easy on the eye, but sometimes I don't want to look at a player and say, oh, he dribbles really good, he looks silky on the ball. Bro, give me a goal, give me an assist, and shut up. Because when the team that I support are struggling to win a trophy, I don't need fancy dribbles. I don't need the fact that, oh, he put the ball through his legs a couple times in the game. I need someone I can rely on, that can score goals and get assists and really help my team go forward in their lives. And Mohamed Salah is that guy, because season on season on season on season on season. Ever since playing his first season in the Premier League, this guy has put his name up there as one of the very best players in the league and probably the best winger that we've seen in the Premier League as a whole. He got 47 goal involvements this season with 29 goals and 18 assists, breaking records in Liverpool's title-winning campaign. He also has the most goals against the top 6 in the Premier League and has constantly shown to be a dominant force in this Liverpool side. And from an established star to one that was, hounded out of his former team and has completely rebuilt his reputation. Scott McTominay was the Serie A MVP, contributing to 32% of Napoli's goals in the league. And this is all while playing central midfield. This guy injected dynamism into a dying Napoli midfield, being able to progress the ball with ease and also show attacking and defensive consistency. He got 13 goals and 6 assists in all competitions, but honestly, it was his in-game impact, because McTominay showed that he can be an all-action midfielder, someone that can drag the team forward when they're down, but also flourish when a team is popping it about. And alongside him this season as one of the best players in football, we talk about a real midfielder. Pedri of Barcelona. Just because he doesn't get the goals or assists, people are forgetting that this guy is world class. He is one of the best midfielders in football. Barcelona without Pedri is like waking up to make a cup of tea and there's no milk. It doesn't make sense. I'm gonna be depressed for the rest of the day until I get my milk back. Just like Barcelona would be depressed if Pedri got injured again, because they need him. And I already have an entire video titled, Pedri, I was unfamiliar with your game. So if you want to hear Pedri glaze, you just go over there. But now we have to talk about Ousmane Dembele, because he still gets a lot of slack, mainly because in some of the biggest games he might not show up. But this Champions League campaign, he completely silenced the doubters, having a slow start then recovering and finding an amazing run of form. Dembele won the Golden Boot in Ligue with 33 goals, but that doesn't even add up for all of his, impact and involvement this season, because in all competitions he also got 15 assists, from being moved from a winger to being played centrally and really having a control on games, being allowed the time and space to drop in deep and receive the ball and help with link-up play. You saw it in slow motion in the Champions League final with that goal, where he's backheeled the ball into the path of Vitinha. Vitinha's driven, passed it to Doué, and Doué scored. In that moment, a couple seasons ago, would you see Dembele even in this position to make a move like that and set it off? No. And alongside him as some of the best players this season, you have to talk about Rafinha. Rafinha was amazing for so long this season, and then suddenly no one talked about it. Finishing the year with 34 goals and 25 assists in all competitions, this guy was breaking records in the Champions League, scoring the most in the group stage, and was showing out. And I think it's because the winger that he's opposite is Lamine Yamal that he is kind of seen as the underrated one, yet his numbers completely outdo Yamal's. His impact for Barcelona as a runner, a hard worker, a guy that is gonna really get your team back involved in the game is completely underappreciated, and he has been one of the best players this season. People will probably get at me for not mentioning Mbappe, and I do think Mbappe had a decent season, but I don't think he's up there with one of his prime seasons. He got over how many goal involvements, but I just don't think it's the same Mbappe that we really expected to see despite the numbers, because if you actually watched him play for a lot of the games, he ghosted for a lot of the start of the season, and I think he could do way better. But in terms of a footballer that was completely dominant in all aspects this season, you cannot forget to talk about Lamine Yamal. This guy, in my opinion, is probably the best player to watch right now. And despite not having comparable numbers to the likes of Dembele, Rafinha, Mo Salah, this guy's 17 years old, and his primary action is to create. He not only creates chances, but he also creates chaos and comes up clutch in big moments. And with 18 goals and 25 assists in all competitions this season, it's not like he has inferior numbers, to say the least. This guy has injected himself as easily the best right winger in football and possibly the best player. And I think the reason why I'm saying this is because despite not winning, the Champions League like the likes of Ousmane Dembele, Lamine Yamal on every stage has showed up. And you can't even tell me that he was probably the only guy going toe-to-toe with every single action he took. And he had a couple unfortunate misses at the end, but you cannot take away the fact that this guy is a teenager doing it, playing like a fully grown man. So in my opinion, I would give the best player of the year award to Lamine Yamal. And he even showed it the other day in the Nations League, reminding the likes of Ousmane Dembele, reminding the French national national team, that he is still the guy, scoring, assisting, being impactful. So well done, Lamine Yamal. More glazing. What do we expect? There's going to be many years of this. Our next award is the worst signing of the season. Yeah, who made these awards? I don't know. Now, of course, people are going to say Raheem Sterling, who Arsenal signed on deadline day for a loan fee. But he's not the worst signing of the season. He didn't cost us anything. We didn't put down a bunch of money to sign Sterling. It was just wages, and now he's gone. He's been released back to Chelsea, and he's going to go live out his career there. But there were some other worst signings this season. Players that actually costed big money. And one of them is Manuel Ugarte. People are actually forgetting that Manchester United spent £50 million on Ugarte. But this guy has had virtually no impact. He's literally just been a toilet bowl that you've just flushed money down. Because how can you waste that amount of money on a player that has done nothing for your side? PSG are laughing. Now let's talk about the best signings of the year award. Transfers that made an impact instantly and transformed the team that they were bought to play for. And first on this list, we have to talk about Dean Huijsen, because the Spanish or Dutch centre-back was brought in this season by Bournemouth from Juventus. On January 30th of 2024, Iraola and Bournemouth pulled off an absolute steal, bringing this guy in, and he, helped them rise up the table this season, adding this composure and progressive element to every ball that he hit, helping this Bournemouth side punch above their weight all season. And his impact has been clear to see, having now made a move to Real Madrid, showing that his level is not Bournemouth level. This is a guy that could be a world-class centre-back, and he's now even starting for Spain in the Nations League as their main guy. But if I'm being honest, Kavica Kvaratskhelia was bought in for 70 million in January, and on impact since making that move to PSG, this guy was completely phenomenal. A key man in this PSG side that was filled with so much brilliance. I think he deserves the award as the best transfer of the season, because he literally led PSG to, secure the league, secure the Champions League, and was a vital part of it. And finally, this is an award that you guys can choose. What was your most memorable match that you watched this season? The match that made you, get off your feet. One of them has to be the Man United Lyon game in the Europa League. Arsenal versus Manchester City when we drew 2-2 at the start of the season. I've got a bunch of picks, but this is a question that I throw to you guys. Of course, give me your winners for each award. This was just a bit of a joke. Don't take any of these rankings seriously. If you want me to praise your player more or want me to include this, bro, come on, man. I ain't got all day. Now, I might be a little bit late to this, but the Club World Cup final was a movie. It was an absolute cinematical masterpiece of film that we actually have to talk about. And I didn't want to talk about it because I'm a hater. Seeing Chelsea win the Club World Cup was like seeing my arch rival get knighted and become the greatest YouTuber of all time, when deep down, I hate that individual. So let's talk about the Club World Cup itself and the final between Chelsea and PSG. After battling through the group stage of this competition, I decided, you know what? Let's just give this a try. Let's take in the Club World Cup. And after big results here and upsets there, the semi-finals came around and Chelsea was still popping it about. They would come up against Fluminense, the last Brazilian team in the competition, with this team being an ode to the first Club World Cup winners, Corinthians, who were also a Brazilian team. But in this game, it wouldn't be a Brazilian side that would get the victory, because Chelsea had just injected João Pedro into their side. Yes, he had transferred in midway through the tournament, joined the side, started in this game, and scored twice in the match. And this is a striker that we all know from the likes of Brighton and Watford, but this guy is also a youth prospect from Fluminense themselves. They would sign João Pedro during the competition, start him against his former team, and he would flourish. And even though João Pedro would be amazing in this game with stunning finishes, it would actually not be as smooth as you think, with Trevor Chalobah conceding a penalty that was ultimately reversed by VAR. And honestly, watching this game and a few of the games that Chelsea played prior to this, they were looking extremely good together as a unit. The likes of Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, and of course Cole Palmer, all showing out and showing that they can, distribute their abilities on a world stage. And although this is not the best of competitions to really see who is the best, they were still holding their own in a competition with a bunch of, heavyweight giants. But on the topic of some heavyweight giants, on the other side of the bracket, it would be PSG taking on Real Madrid, with the winner being able to face Chelsea in a final, which honestly, for a lot of us, meant instant victory for either Real Madrid or PSG. Come on, these guys, they can take down Chelsea, right? And if you thought Chelsea's takedown of Fluminense was something to marvel at, then this game was a battering. Actually brutality in itself. PSG would obliterate Real Madrid 4-0. And when I mean this was brutality, it was, because by the 24th minute, it was already 3-0. Yes. With the first goal in the game being initiated by Ousmane Dembele after, going in to tackle Raul Asensio, the block shot would get parried to Fabian Ruiz, who would put the ball in the back of the net. Then another defensive error would occur, with Antonio Rudiger misplacing a pass going into the path of Dembele, and Dembele finishing cleanly into the back of the net. In the 24th minute, Hakimi would race down the flank of the pitch, put it across the box, and again, Fabian Ruiz would be there to pull it into the back of the net. And then late on in the game, thanks to a couple substitutions, Gonzalo Ramos would enter the stage and score the final goal to make it 4-0, with his celebration being in honour of Diogo Jota. PSG's attack throughout this game would honestly be breathtaking, with their highest possession stat being over 80% in the match. And with this possession and pressure that PSG were putting on Real Madrid, they could not stand the heat. It looked easy, and this Real Madrid side looked absolutely useless after coming off a couple solid wins in the previous rounds and in the group stages. But with the likes of Dean Huijsen suspended going into this game and Trent Alexander-Arnold, injured, they looked lost. And after this beating of Real Madrid, it would line up a final between PSG and Chelsea, an all-European tie that honestly would be tantalizing to say the least. Because coming from an Arsenal fan, we were thinking PSG were going to absolutely put belt to booty to Chelsea. But things turned out a little bit different. This Club World Cup final would turn out to be a masterclass by Enzo Maresca's Chelsea. With their game plan being aggressive, they were going to go man to man with these PSG players, with a midfield duo of the likes of Reece James and Moises Caicedo to bully these PSG players. And honestly, it looked like it worked, with Caicedo absolutely fatiguing the likes of Vitinha, João Neves and Fabian Ruiz. And after the blueprint had been set, it looked simple. Press these PSG players, counter and finish off your opportunities. And these Chelsea players sure did, with ice cold efficiency. With Robert Sanchez turning into prime Iker Casillas in this game, for the first time in his entire career, consistently launching long passes to the likes of, Cole Palmer, who could attack on the counter. And it was a similar move that led to Chelsea's first goal in the game, with a long ball going to Malo Gusto, who absorbed the pressure from Nuno Mendes and took advantage of it, driving towards the 18-yard box and trying a shot for himself. The shot would then get blocked, but the rebound would go back into the path of Gusto, and Gusto would start cooking a dish of his own, sliding the ball across the box into the path of Cole Palmer, who opened up his body beautifully and smoothly finished the ball into the back of the net. 1-0 Chelsea, and the stands were alive. I was seeing, Fabrizio going crazy in the crowd. Yeah, if you guys remember him, he made an appearance in this video. Yeah, he actually went to the game, which is crazy. And I'm here on a green screen, and he's watching PSG versus Chelsea. And despite Chelsea going 1-0 up, it was not over yet. It's not over yet. They would end up doubling up the score just 8 minutes later, with the ball being played to that right hand flank again, but this time it was Cole Palmer who received it, and again PSG were on the back foot. Constantly, this Chelsea midfield would break down PSG's ideas and put the ball into these wide areas that, their Chelsea attackers could take advantage of. And this was another one of these chances. But this chance wouldn't happen again, because Cole Palmer would grab it with two hands and put it into the back of the net, showing the world that he is really here to take the crown as one of the best young players in football right now. And as much as this finish looks simple from Palmer, it was a bunch of different things that happened that made this opportunity so golden. because as Cole Palmer was cutting inwards into the box, João Pedro would make a deceiving run to take away the defenders, making him second guess if he should, go towards and engage with Palmer or track the run of João Pedro. And Palmer would use this opportunity to throw in a bit of body feints and flair to throw off the defenders so they don't engage too closely, allowing himself the time to place the ball into the back of the net. Now, I know it's only been about 3 weeks since the new Premier League season started, but this year's campaign is already looking like a problem. First of all, we just got the news that Liverpool have signed Alexander Isak for £130 million. That is the second time that they've broken the transfer record this transfer window. Bro, that is not normal. And they also already brought a striker in Ekitike. They can't keep getting away with this. Like, this is too much. And on deadline day, they also nearly pulled off the signature of Mark Gay. Bowels. But luckily for us, my sanity and my hairline, it did not go through. Oliver Glasner said, no, we need him at the back. How are we going to survive this season? But this is not even a transfer video. Let me not get ahead of myself. I just want to talk about what we've seen in the Premier League so far since the start of this season. And of course, while we're on the topic of Liverpool signings, let's just address their amazing start to this campaign, as they sit at the top of the table with a solid 9 points, whilst also splashing the cash on numerous big signings, whether it's Kirkes, Alexander Isak, Ekitike, Wirtz, Frimpong. They just pulled off a FIFA 17 career mode transfer window where the budget is just unlimited. You go out and spend on whoever you want. And from match day 1, this team had already showed their resilience in the league. In a dramatic opening to the season, Liverpool would beat Bournemouth 4-2, but this win would be overshadowed with the fact that a Liverpool supporter would throw racial insults at Antoine Semenyo, a Liverpool supporter that was actually in a wheelchair. I don't discriminate. You can't even walk and you're telling man about his skin color. You're finished. But aside with that, this game was, fantastic. With Hugo Ekitike introducing himself and Cody Gakpo doubling the lead. But despite all this and the situation that would occur, it would be Semenyo that bagged 2 goals for Bournemouth, striking twice in the 64th and the 76th minute, with one of his goals being a beautiful solo run driving, at this Liverpool defense, with Van Dijk just backing off. This guy said, you know what, let me just score. And it all looked like Bournemouth were just going to go ahead and steal the win. But no. Just like in Bleach, where Eisen stopped Ichigo's blade and theme music, Liverpool did the same to Bournemouth and Semenyo. And the guy that stopped this momentum single-handedly was Federico Chiesa. The forgotten man turned super sub had just scored the winner. But that was not all, because Salah would actually get a goal too, sealing the win and just demonstrating that Liverpool this season were never going to be counted out. It doesn't matter how late in the game it gets, they still have the chance of winning. We also had an opener between Manchester United and Arsenal that was a stinkfest, if I'm being honest. As an Arsenal fan, with all the hype surrounding this fixture, Arsenal going to Old Trafford, first game of the season, it was a stinker, with the only goal in the game coming from a corner, Ricardo Calafiori, aka our model left back. And that's pretty much it. We also had Spurs kicking off their season with a big win against Burnley, with Richarlison scoring, a goal of the season contender already. Elsewhere on opening weekend, we also had Manchester City absolutely destroying Wolves. And this would spark debate on whether Manchester City were officially back. Had Pep Guardiola revitalized football again, brought in the likes of Tajani Reinders, who balled out in this game with a goal and an assist. But just a couple of weeks later, all of this would be put to bed. And I'll get into that further into this video. But if we're being honest, Manchester City did look fluid in this game, with the new signings, Reinders and Cherki, playing a big part in this win. Then came match day 2, with the lead game being West Ham versus Chelsea. And this was just one of them fixtures that got out of hand very quickly, with West Ham's Paqueta scoring a banger within the first 10 minutes of the game. But then West Ham would come back to reality, because in the 15th minute, João Pedro would get his goal. And then it would be Pedro Neto, and then Enzo Fernandez, and then Moises Caicedo, and then Trevor Chalobah. Chelsea looking absolutely dominant in this game and cameos from the likes of Esteval impressing, the entirety of football that was watching. And another dominant display would follow, with Arsenal beating Leeds United 5-0, which starred Gyökeres, Arsenal's new main man up top, who did impress to say the least. Gyökeres' first goal for Arsenal was a brilliant one, picking up the ball on the left hand side and driving towards the goal. And it would be in this position where he was driving across goal, where he would cut it back onto that bottom left corner in the goal and score his first ever for Arsenal. Saka would be the one who opened the scoring for Arsenal on the day, but wouldn't make it till the final whistle because he would actually be taken off in his first injury of the season. But despite this setback and Martin Ødegaard going off, Arsenal still managed this win perfectly and finished it with 5 goals. Gyökeres actually scoring a penalty that was won by Max Daumann's appearance on the pitch. And if you don't know who Max Daumann is, he is a 15-year-old Arsenal football player. During game week 2, we also saw Manchester City suffer a defeat at the hands of Thomas Frank and his Tottenham men. This is like usual now, because in the history of the Tottenham, they beat Man City a lot. But when you watch the entire game, like, Man City just had multiple chances and squandered them, because they could have been 2 or 3-0 up before Tottenham got their first goal. Man United would fail to get their first 3 points in the season by also drawing to Fulham. And, there's other games that I could talk about, but I'm not making this video 1 hour 45 minutes. But if there is another match from game week 2 that I do want to talk about, it is Everton versus Brighton. Everton would play Brighton off the park in their first home game of the season, with the likes of Iliman Ndiaye and James Gardner scoring the goals on the day. But when you really watch this game back, it would be Jack Grealish that had a hold on the entire flow of the 90 minutes, with him actually getting 2 assists for both of the goals. Everton looking like a brand new version of themselves, with new signings in the likes of Grealish and Dewsbury Hall showing up and performing very well. And honestly, I hope this continues, because Everton have always been, one of them sides during the Barclays era that I always watched and kind of liked a few of their players, the likes of Steven Pienaar, Tim Cahill, and even, shout out that brother, what's his name? Hibbert. And I also nearly forgot to talk about this amazing game between Liverpool and Newcastle that happened on Monday, the 25th of August. Because during this time, the Isak conflict was at its peak, with Isak releasing statements and saying that he's never going to play for Newcastle again, and Liverpool being the only option for Isak, to go to. This was the game that would decide it all. Not really, because money would decide it all, but this game would have some flares, some fights, and some action, with Ryan Gravenberch getting the first goal in the game in the 35th minute, but this would be completely overshadowed by Anthony Gordon, who would do, an amazing challenge on Virgil van Dijk to get himself a red card and sent off on the 45th minute. This is still the first half. He would take out Virgil van Dijk, the man with 5 hairstyles, waves, a taper trim, a shape up, an afro, a ponytail. This brother can do it all, but he couldn't, evade this tackle because Anthony Gordon absolutely chopped his leg off nearly. And in his fit of rage, he would make his team suffer even more, because Liverpool would come out in that second half and score instantly, with Hugo Ekitike bagging another goal. Ekitike made it 2-0 before Arne Slot had even, gotten off the toilet. He was probably busting a fat watery doo-doo and then heard the shouts and came out like this. But in a shock twist of events, Bruno Guimaraes would score in the 57th minute, and with tension, just building throughout the entire game, Newcastle would get a late equalizer. A goal in the 88th minute by William Osula looked like it had tied up the game officially. But as stoppage time would loom, a Liverpool youngster named Rio Nyomoha would come onto the pitch and surprisingly make an impact. Also, I don't know if I pronounced his last name right. Someone correct me, because this guy is going to be an absolute baller in the future, and I'm going to probably have to talk about his surname many times. And in one of the final movements of the game, with the ball coming across the box, Dominic Szoboszlai would dummy the ball, and it would be Rio that put the ball in the back of the net in a chance that looked quite simple but is not, because I have seen Gabriel Martinelli in this exact position and take a touch. He does a step over and misses. Or his first time finish goes over the bar. But Rio whipped this first time into the corner of the goal and made it look absolutely beautiful. And in the following game week, we would see this exact situation play out again, with Liverpool stealing a win right at the depths of the game. Well, not this late, but it kind of happened again in a snatch and grab victory that Liverpool would win against Arsenal. Arsenal fans would go into this game with overconfidence. Somehow they had just grabbed this belief from, I don't know, the end of a rainbow and decided that they were going to beat Liverpool quite easily this season. Yet going to Anfield, the team did absolutely nothing. The only player on the pitch for Arsenal that actually made some sort of impact was Noni Madueke, a signing that the entirety of the Arsenal fan base completely lamented and didn't want to happen. Yet he was probably the only guy that Arsenal fans were screaming at their TV to score, because Gyökeres didn't do anything, Martinelli didn't do anything, there was no creativity in the midfield. Arteta actually set up to defend a 1-1 or a 0-0, and it played out because Liverpool had a bit of moment of magic. Dominik Szoboszlai scores a free kick that nobody thought he would score, including me, and he played right back the entire game and somehow bossed a right back position. Is he an amazing right back, or is Martinelli a dreadful left winger that didn't utilize playing up against a midfielder? I don't know. You guys decide. But as an Arsenal fan, I was watching this in disbelief. I did not know what kind of football I was watching. It was genuinely horrific, because when I watched the rest of the games in game week 3, that's real football. You know, sometimes when I watch my own team, I'm just like, this is not enjoyable whatsoever. And I know it was against Liverpool, but you can have some sort of creativity about you, some sort of sense that you're playing in a certain pattern. You're just watching guys trying to get corners, dashing it into the box, maybe 1 or 2 balls in behind. That's about it. And the rest of it is just defense. Our best players all the time is just David Raya and Gabriel. And in this game, we also got an injury to William Saliba. We're cooked. I'm not talking about this game. Dominik Szoboszlai scored an amazing free kick, but Arsenal were just completely awful. And again, Liverpool come out with the 3 points, and they haven't even really picked up from first gear yet. They're not even in second gear. And in this same game week, we saw the likes of Brighton get a 2-1 win against Manchester City in a performance that genuinely, the football is fluid. The football is amazing. When they're transitioning, they're passing well. Matoma giving the ball there. You know, Gruder's goal. Going past a defender, leaving a defender on the floor and finishing against Manchester City. And there seems to be more questions that need to be asked of Pep Guardiola. You know, is his system working with these players? Or are they just failing for him? Are they failing him? Are they not playing as good as they should be? Haaland getting a goal as usual, getting FPL guys, you know, their couple points. But again, a lackluster performance for Man City, and puts them in a dreary position going into an international break. Like Liverpool, Chelsea would continue their unbeaten streak, winning 2-0 against Fulham in a game that again had some VAR controversy that has lingered throughout the entirety of this Premier League season so far, with Fulham's Josh King having a goal disallowed via, you know, a challenge that happened earlier on in the move, but then Chelsea going on and scoring 2 goals. It's just a bunch of nonsense over and over again with VAR. Tottenham's good streak had also come to an end with them losing 1-0 at the hands of Bournemouth, with Evan Nilsson scoring an early goal in the game and then Tottenham just fizzling out throughout. We also had a bombastic performance by Crystal Palace as they beat Aston Villa 3-0 away from home. And all I can really think about after this game is Marc Bizot. Because before the start of this game, Unai Emery was asked about the future of Emi Martinez, Aston Villa's goalkeeper who had been left out of the squad. But Unai Emery just replied with the goalkeeper that he was starting in this game's name.
Bizot. Marco Bizot.
Where is Emi Martinez though?
Marco Bizot.
Crystal Palace, however, would look dominant with Oliver Glasner's football, again, so much better than what I'm watching at Arsenal. I'm seeing Adam Wharton, you know, progressively move the ball forward. Mateta holding up the ball and getting others into play, scoring a goal. You know, Sarr getting a goal from a header at the back post. We had Mark Guehi just randomly whipping the ball into the top corner from the edge of the 18-yard box. Crystal Palace are looking solid, and obviously deadline day had just passed and Guehi was supposed to go to Liverpool, but Crystal Palace has held on to their captain, and hopefully he can take them deep, you know, into this season and try and challenge for them European spots officially. This squad is one that I have taken a liking into, and I really hope that they do succeed. And even with the departure of Eze to Arsenal, I still think that they can have some success. And the final game that I'll talk about that happened in match week 3, you know, before the international break, that I'll touch upon is Manchester United, you know, getting their first win of the season versus Burnley in a well-earned, you know, victory. Well, actually not. It wasn't well-earned at all. It was not well-earned at all. Again, the referees, I don't know what's going on. Man United would be drawing 2-2 with Burnley all the way until like the 94th minute, where they would get a penalty. And this was via a Amad Diallo sort of dive into the box that almost looked like it was on the edge of the area and he jumped into it. Yet the ref was told to look at it at his screen, looks at it and gives it as a penalty. And then Bruno Fernandes slots it in. This was probably the most important penalty of his entire life. And somehow this win has probably made them even worse, because I didn't really see anything from Amorim ball or Amorim's style of play in this game either. Now, after this first bit of Premier League action that we've seen so far, there have been a bunch of surprises, with Liverpool completely dominating in quite unsurprising fashion, but second place in the table right now is Chelsea. And honestly, looking at the rest of the table, everyone seems to be, you know, going at each other equally. Other than Liverpool being an outlier with 9 points, nobody has started this season in dominating fashion. And even when you really take a step back and look at Liverpool's performances, it's not like they've been dominating every game. They've been hard-earned victories and late winners. But after this deadline day has closed, genuinely this league is looking like a problem for world football. You know, the European competitions this season, they better watch out. After the international break, we are going to see some new faces and a lot of different styles of play having to be implemented into the league, because new players are going to have to be introduced into new systems. You tell me what you're thinking of the Premier League season so far, and also I might have another video relating to something else in current football coming up very soon. Now, as you guys can see from my incredible outfit, I attended the Ballon d'Or ceremony last night, and if I'm being completely honest, the 2025 Ballon d'Or made absolutely zero sense. And not because Ousmane Dembele won the award, but the rankings were weird, and also the reaction to Dembele winning the award is actually quite strange. It's not even been 24 hours yet and people are already outraged that Lamine Yamal didn't win, with his dad already popping up in articles saying that the Ballon d'Or should be ashamed. But in my eyes, Dembele was easily the best player in the last year, especially when taking into account what it takes to win a Ballon d'Or. Dembele wins his first ever Ballon d'Or in a season where PSG was so dominant, untouchable all the way until the Club World Cup. That is anyone really counting that? But the rankings, the order and the logic that has gone around into this competition this year, it is just baffling. From Rafinha being placed at 8th, Palmer being in the top 10 and Pedri being 11th. This ranking is looking like it was made by a TikTok football content creator that don't even speak, they just make edits. But first of all, before we dive into the rankings, we have to give our flowers to Ousmane Dembele. A Champions League win, domestic dominance and being named the best Champions League player of last season. His production last campaign hit a peak that we had never expected. Around 35 goals and 14 assists in 53 matches. And he was decisive in many of the big games for PSG, turning up on the half turn of the year back in January. And by now you guys probably know this, but early on last season, Dembele was not even in the squad. He was dropped by Luis Enrique. He needed Dembele to show that he trusted this process. And one big game he would miss would be Arsenal versus PSG back in the Ligue phase of the Champions League last season. Then after being re-injected into the squad, he would just take over from the start of 2025 all the way until the end of the season. And this is where that journey would eventually take him to Ballon d'Or victory. But let's not act like this guy wasn't a wonder kid breaking through at Rennes. jumping into their first team back in the 2015/16 season. Then at 19 in the 2016/17 season, he hits Germany like some sort of glitch. The raw pace and just direct ability, this guy would actually score in the DFB Pokal semi-final against Bayern Munich. Then also put up an amazing performance in the final of the competition too. Then after making his name known at Dortmund, he would make a massive blockbuster move to Barcelona. And he was supposed to be the replacement for Neymar, but it would never really show. And whilst he had his spells at Barcelona where he was playing amazing, he also had his injuries. He would miss at big moments and not be clutch in the situations where Barcelona really needed him. But then he rebooted himself in Paris, respawning in France back in 2023, and since then he has slowly been making his way to the top. Even through all the incomings and outgoings, he has stuck through this period of time, waited for the likes of Luis Enrique to be involved in the squad, and finally reached the pinnacle of football. And somehow there's already people downplaying this journey and also this amazing season that he had last year to give the award to someone like Lamine Yamal, who has an entire career ahead of him. Someone that is definitely guaranteed multiple Ballon d'Ors throughout their career. And let's quickly talk about this guy because he doesn't do himself any justice. The amount of ego this kid has already is crazy, and honestly he has backed it up on multiple occasions. But lately he has been taking a couple L's. Like if we want to talk about him losing in the Champions League final to Inter, we can. But he did put up 10 out of 10 performances home and away. But then you could also mention that he did lose the Nations League to a 40-year-old Ronaldo. But then again, it was a joint effort, you know, it's not just Lamine Yamal going up against this entire Portuguese squad. In all competitions last year, he would finish with 18 goals and 25 assists, with a lot of his moments coming in the big games. Not the highest when it comes to La Liga stats. This guy was always popping up for Barcelona in the Champions League through their run last year, being their top creator and actually at the Ballon d'Or ceremony winning the Copa trophy. And even though in many people's eyes and even mine, Yamal is probably their favourite player to watch, I don't think he was more deserving than Usman. Vitinha was also placed 3rd in the ranking, which I think is absolutely... But what's going on? Come Vitinha for free. And I guess it's not just about his 8 goals and 5 assists. It was his impact throughout that Champions League run. But again, Vitinha wasn't really the outlier in the midfield every single game. Like, did he really have a better season to be placed higher than the likes of Salah and Rafinha? He had one season that was amazing, and it was last year, and we're already placed him 3rd in the Ballon d'Or. 4th is then Mohamed Salah, who had an incredible individual campaign for Liverpool and also helped them win the Premier League, with 34 goals and 23 assists in 52 games. Also 47 GA in the Premier League alone. Really, Vitinha had a better season than this guy? Hell no. And then even Rafinha coming in at 5th. Bro, Rafinha was arguably Barcelona's most, involved player in every single game. Even though Yamal had the standout, probably better 10 out of 10 games against Inter in the Champions League deep in there, Rafinha was still the guy carrying them from the start of their season, and not just in the Champions League. He was there in La Liga too. All the games, in all the competitions, Rafinha is the guy that is working hard, finishing with 34 goals and 25 assists in 57 games. Multiple performances where he was the one on the end getting the goal that took Barcelona over the line. I think he should have been in the top 3. And then we've got Achraf Hakimi at 5th, arguably the best right back in the world right now. But with all the dodgy allegations he's got going on in the back, I'ma just skip this one. Kylian Mbappe would finish 7th, and I think that's just off output alone because he didn't have a great season when it came to winning trophies. And still, despite this headline of having a poor season, he would get 44 goals. And just behind Mbappe, that had 44 goals in all comps, who was in the Champions League at least and did get thrown out by Arsenal, we have Cole Palmer. A guy that wasn't in the Champions League, had a decent season, not his best last year, and then won the Club World Cup. Come on, I love Cole Palmer. He's the greatest depiction of a number 10 in football right now. One of my favourite players to watch. Silky on the ball, creative, smooth, ice, cold. Hell no, is he number 8.
What?
And then we've got more PSG players like Donnarumma, Nuno Mendes, etc. And then we head outside of the top 10, where dangling at 11th is Pedri. He can't even make top 10? Nah, this is crazy. They don't know ball. France football. What's going on? They just slapped every PSG player that had a case for them into the top 10 and said, yeah, firm it. But they clearly didn't watch the games because Pedri was arguably as influential as the likes of Yamal and Rafinha deep in the Champions League for Barcelona. He was the control room for Barcelona. Without him, they wouldn't run. He's simply just overlooked time and time again until he wins some sort of silverware with Barcelona, like properly, wins like a double. Bro, no one's going to put him up there with some of the best. And then even Harry Kane at 13th, having an amazing season. Is it because he's old that he's 13th? I don't know. And Michael Elise, arguably a top 5 winger last season, is 30th. How is he not ahead of Cole Palmer? I'm sorry. Now, of course, the Ballon d'Or trophy itself has been controversial for many years, with people not knowing if this trophy is given to the best player or the best player that had the best campaign with the best team. And then we have the topic of the Champions League inflation, because if you win the Champions League, you're more than likely to win the Ballon d'Or. But arguably, there were players that didn't win the Champions League this season that had better campaigns individually than Dembele. And that's not my personal views, because I think Dembele had an incredible final performance and many performances that were memorable. But in terms of people's arguments online, we've got Rafinha, who had 13 Champions League goals last season. And then of course we have Yamal, who had iconic moments just ripping up every single defender that was on the right hand side of any squad. But yeah, the Ballon d'Or just seems to lose its credibility year in and year out, and this year looks like it's going to be the same. However, I do think that the winner is completely deserved. Dembele, hats off to you. I hope you have, a similar campaign this season. Now, it's come to my attention that there are many players taking part in the great lock-in this season, including this guy, Breakout, who is now the channel mascot on my second channel. So if you want to hear me talk to him about football stuff, go and check it out. First link in the description, and let's talk about players that are absolutely locked in this 2025/26 season. And first up on my list is Harry Kane, because Harry Kane has started this season off in fine fashion, kind of like he always does. With goals, volume and efficiency, Harry Kane is leading this Bayern Munich side that has been reshaped over the off-season, dealing with new partnerships up top with Luis Diaz on his left and his backup striker being
Nicolas Jackson.
And he has opened up his goal scoring in the Bundesliga like a 100-meter sprinter. He's run into the money, becoming the outright leader in the top 5 leagues for goals scored. And this honestly is the standard for Harry Kane. This is the standards that he's set himself ever since making that move to Bayern Munich. Because it's not like this is some unusual feat. It's not like Harry Kane hasn't done this in years. Bro, this is the usual. Let's just wait till the later months. But what's kind of different this year is that he's also adding in some big important Champions League goals too, with a brilliant performance coming to mind being Chelsea in the Champions League. He has 4 Champions League goals in just 2 games and has been on a riot in the Bundesliga too, with brilliant performances against numerous teams, a hat-trick against Hoffenheim in a 7-0 win. 2 goals and an assist in a game against Werder Bremen. He is setting the pace for strikers in football right now, and honestly I think his whole team needs a bit of a standing ovation. Because Vincent Kompany has been hit with certain injuries, with Jamal Musiala being out. He's brought in the likes of Luis Diaz, and also Michael Elise has stepped up and become the man on that right hand side. They've also got an injection of Serge Gnabry, who's been coming off the bench and making impact for them too. And honestly, this side is looking as solid as ever, with no questions being asked on their back too, on their defensive line. The midfield looking quite good too. And again, let's just see how this team prevails in the later stages of this season. Will they come up against big teams in the Champions League, and will they fail when it really matters? We will just have to see. And another player that a lot of people are just watching and waiting to slip up is Kylian Mbappe. In a new season at the same club, he is proving a lot of people wrong. Maybe it was a system issue. Now, despite Real Madrid not starting this season in a perfect way, Mbappe has said, you know what, I don't really care what the rest of this team does. I am showing the world that I am that guy. Because we all saw it last season with performances against Barcelona where he would score goals but still lose. Mbappe is having impacts in games where Real Madrid need a win. He is among the top goal scorers in Europe's top 5 leagues with 9 league goals, and has stepped up on numerous occasions where Real Madrid has needed him, with them going down to 10 men in multiple games and Mbappe picking up the load and saying, I got this. Helping in victories against the likes of Real Sociedad where Real Madrid won 2-1. Another brilliant performance against Levante where Real Madrid would win 4-1, Mbappe having a big hold on the game. And also in the Champions League, we saw him claw back Real Madrid into a game against Marseille where they would go 1-0 down, and then eventually Mbappe would take control, being decisive in the moments where it mattered and scoring a brace on the night. And I think it's about time that Real Madrid start prioritizing Mbappe in this team, because they decided to bring him in so why are you not playing to his strengths? And despite still having to fit in all these superstars into one starting 11, it seems like Mbappe has found his feet, but we need to keep an eye on him for the rest of this season. I'm hoping that he does generational activities throughout the entirety of this campaign. Bro has gone up into a different gear. This might be gear secondo. And another one of these guys that has gone into a different gear is Erling Haaland, who is joining Mbappe, reclaiming the throne at the top to be the pinnacle of world football. Haaland is trying to get there too, because this robot looking striker is taking over the Premier League once again, leading the league with 9 goals in 7 games, becoming the fastest ever player to reach 50 goals in the Champions League. He did it in 49 games. This guy is not real. He is a pacifista. He is a robot. And again, we've seen examples of him showing his clinical ability to just finish in the box for Manchester City. With one of my favourite goals of his this season being that finish against Napoli with Foden lobbing the ball over the defender. It was a hard finish for Haaland to put in the back of the net, but he made it look so simple. Or his brace in the Champions League against Monaco as well. And then he's also continued to have this trait of just finishing teams when they're already done, scoring late against Burnley in the Premier League. He's displaying a bit more to his game this season. I've seen Haaland pick up the ball from deep and start driving at defenders. I don't know if I'm going to be able to source the clips, but I am telling you, when I've been watching Haaland, he's been doing this a couple times in a game. He was also pretty good in a game against Arsenal, coming up against the Brothers of Destruction in Saliba and Gabriel. And that's a rivalry that we just love to see as football fans, the best defenders going up against some of the best strikers, aka the best striker in the world right now, Haaland. And another player in the Premier League that we have to mention for his amazing start to the season, Antoine Semenyo. Let me pick up the flowers from the flower bed and hand them to Antoine Semenyo, because this season we have seen the best version of Semenyo in this league. He is showing end product and menace on the ball, with 6 goals and 3 assists in his first 8 games this season. He is among one of the best wingers in the league this season, and it is a fact. And it showed throughout the entirety of it, even from the first week, because even in a scripted loss against Liverpool at Anfield, Semenyo would take the game and control it at times, scoring 2 goals in the game, including a solo run finish where he brought the ball from one side of the pitch all the way to the other half before putting it into the back of the net. And this is the same game where he got racially abused by a guy in a wheelchair. Stay over that side, bro. Stay over that side. He's also been presenting this ability to show up clutch for Bournemouth late on in games, scoring crucial goals against Fulham in a 3-1 win, before also having an amazing performance against Spurs when Bournemouth won 1-0. Even though he didn't get a goal or an assist, he was there and threatening the defence throughout the 90 minutes. He's a hybrid of a classic winger but also a wide forward that likes to pop shots, and I think that's what a lot of big teams in the league need. Being able to drive at a defensive backline and just disrupt a whole movement. Rather than taking one defender to the side and just taking him on, he will just drive at the entire back line, going into battle head first like a Spartan. And while we're on the topic of Spartans, there is another player in this league that has become a gladiator in their position. The Premier League's best ball winner turned long shot phenomenon. Let's talk about Moises Caicedo. He is leading the Premier League in tackles with 28 and interceptions with 18 since the start of this season, combining for 46 since the start of this season, and it's just shown in the way Chelsea have been playing. Because time and time again through Chelsea's ups and downs, Moises Caicedo has been present throughout the entire 90 minutes. And where his team has failed, he has been able to secure his position and make his name known. Just like we saw a few seasons back from Rodri with Manchester City, with every game he played, they were performing well. Moises Caicedo, whenever he starts for Chelsea, shows that he can just dictate and dominate midfields. And what he's added to his game is that he can just score an open play rocket, with goals against the likes of Brentford and the one that everyone's been talking about, that goal against Liverpool in the Premier League. With both of these strikes being momentum swingers, swinging the favour of the game into Chelsea's hands. He literally has had a direct impact in Chelsea winning and losing games. And I think he just gives this Chelsea midfield a bit more oomph. You know, this destroyer in the midfield that can also pass and break defensive lines. He's been an absolute engine this season, and I don't think Chelsea would be in the position that they are without him. I think they would be way lower in the Premier League table. And Enzo Maresca somehow needs to find a way to supplement Caicedo's play, because right now he doesn't have a consistent partner. You know, just imagine Caicedo was injected into multiple midfields in the league. Just imagine him next to the likes of Rice. It would be insane, because Caicedo is happy to sit and hold a midfield back line. This is a position that is in Chelsea's history, with guys like Makelele sitting at the base in front of the defence while letting the two midfielders in front of him go and have fun. But Moises Caicedo in this Chelsea lineup not only does that, but also pushes forward and helps out on the attacking front too. So if Chelsea secure down the other midfield spots in this team, then they will have a thriving midfield and be able to compete with some of the best in not only the league, but in world football. And another player that plays in a similar position to Caicedo that is also having an amazing season where they're just locked in is Adam Wharton. Now, if you like players that break lines from deep, then Adam Wharton is that guy. Because if you were to watch his highlight tapes with some blurry glasses, you would think that this guy was Spanish, but he's not. This is the English Busquets, creating big opportunities and a guy that just never loses the ball. I have seen it whenever I have watched a Crystal Palace game. He's created the most big chances in the Premier League this season with 5 in 7 match weeks, topping the league's official list and putting his name in conversations that we never had him in a few seasons back. But for those who've been watching, we've seen this latent potential be growing within him. Because Wharton has always been a guy that just kept it simple and progressed the play. But this season he's added a bit of flair to his game too, pulling out line-breaking passes and being a bit more involved in attacking play for Crystal Palace. With a high expected assist load this season, he's just shown that he can create opportunities for these Crystal Palace attackers. Yet due to a lot of their lack of clinical finishing ability, Wharton has not seen, the riches. Because again, you take Wharton and you throw him in a different team, put him in Barcelona for a week or two, and he would be feeding the likes of Rafinha, Lewandowski and Lamine Yamal. But because he's at Crystal Palace and his name is Adam Wharton and not Adamita or Amati, he's not getting looked at as one of the best midfielders or promising midfielders in football right now. Yet whenever I watch him play, it seems to me as if he is one of the best. With an example of a brilliant performance of him this season being against Liverpool, where Palace won 2-1, making early passes into the likes of Mateta, who would hold up the ball and bring other players into play. And just remember, this is a 21-year-old central midfielder. He has years to progress in this position. With through balls breaking the lines and deep progressions, Adam Wharton is one of these midfielders that we defo need to be keeping an eye out for the rest of this season. And from a guy that plays like he's Spanish to a guy that's actually playing in Spain, Julian Alvarez has been carrying Atletico Madrid's attack this season with all sorts of abilities in the final third. He has 6 goals in 8 league games this season so far, and that's also with having consecutive statement games in the league, like a hat-trick against Rayo Vallecano or a brace that he scored against Real Madrid. And this brace was absolutely crazy. He was taking over the game. This guy can really do it all. He is one of the most elite forwards in football right now. The ability to drop in deep and play make with the midfield. He can also break the lines with a pass, but also be on the opposite end of the pass and get in behind defenses. He can finish a penalty with ease. He can score set pieces, and he also can be in the box at the right place at the right time to score poacher finishes. I don't know how Manchester City let this guy go. Alvarez being at Atletico, I don't know whether it's a blessing or a curse, because he is at Harambal FC. I would have loved to seen him in a team that just dominate from the start. A team like Liverpool that actually bought a different striker that needs to be talked about in this video. Because Hugo Ekitike has walked into the Premier League after his move from Frankfurt in the summer and has just made it his new home. With off the shoulder runs, movement in the box and end product too, scoring 3 goals and getting 1 assist in the Premier League this season. He's averaging a goal involvement every 92 minutes and is showing that Liverpool actually didn't need to bring in another striker. It's actually disrespectful to Hugo Ekitike that they brought in Alexander Isak and said, you know what, when Ekitike is done with his little purple patch, you're going to come in, take the reins, take the position and send this guy to the bench. And that has not been the case because Alexander Isak has been, a shadow of himself. Whereas when we talk about Ekitike, not only is he getting goals, but he's being involved in Liverpool build-up play. He is flary on the ball, he can get out of tight situations, and he can also drive at your defense. His goals against Everton and Newcastle just display that this guy knows how to finish in tight scenarios. And another striker that is doing it in a similar fashion to Ekitike since moving from another country is Nick Woltemade. This guy is the lankiest striker that we've seen in the Premier League since Peter Crouch, and he's actually showing similar traits to a prime Crouchy, because let's not forget Crouch actually had some decent technical ability and Woltemade has some decent technical ability as well, scoring a winner on his Premier League debut against Wolves, and also he's just been taking the reins when it comes to club and country, getting his first senior goal in the international break against Northern Ireland. He has everything you would want in a classic number 9, the height, the aerial ability, but also the technical ability to link up well on the feet. And I think that's what's been raising a lot of eyebrows in football this season. Seeing a guy with this stature play like he's a 5'10" Portuguese brother. And I think it's been such a breath of fresh air for a lot of Newcastle fans, especially when they've seen Alexander Isak go out the door, force a move to Liverpool. They've got their money's worth. They've put the money down for Woltemade, and he's come and he's given them goals from the off. And lastly in this video, I want to give a quick shout out to Nico Paz, who has been playing out of his skin for Como this season. Now you might be thinking, Jib, you ain't watching Como. Yes, I am. You know why? Because they are managed by Cesc Fabregas, one of my favourite all-time players and a guy that used to play for Arsenal. Fabregas, being the manager, has handed Paz the keys since his move from Real Madrid. And this kid, ever since he's been handed the keys, has been driving, on the freeway, zooming, with direct goal contributions, opening this campaign with 2 goals and 3 assists in his first 4 games, being involved in almost everything positive that Como has done early on in this season, winning Rising Star of the Month in August and September back to back. And one performance that I quickly want to highlight is his game against Fiorentina in the league, getting 2 assists in the game, including one that was deep in the clutch moments of the 90 minutes. Now I don't know if it's just me that thinks this, but the 2025/26 season has actually been cinema. And no, I'm not talking about go down to the local cinema, Odeon cinema with your friends and go get some popcorn, yeah. No, I'm talking about absolute hands over head cinema. Since the start of the season, there have been games that people are not even remembering. Did you guys remember that PSG played Barcelona in the Champions League group stage table league phase? Yeah, that happened. And it was a brilliant game. But there was a bunch of stuff that has happened so far this season, and we gotta just talk about some of it. We've seen the likes of Arsenal dominate Bayern Munich, Chelsea dominate Barcelona, scorelines in all competitions that just made no sense. Who thought a game between PSG and Spurs would end 5-3? We've also got the likes of Mbappe, Haaland and Kane going at each other like this is Neymar, Messi and Ronaldo, all fighting for the chance to get their hands on the Ballon d'Or. But these times there, it's gonna probably be like Vitinha if he wins the Champions League with PSG. We've also now seen the return of Pogba, and I know it was for like 5 minutes, but still, Paul Pogba is back. We've also got breakout stars in the Serie A with Nico Paz and a 39-year-old Jamie Vardy scoring goals for Cremonense. Now, football throughout the years has had patches, but I'm not someone to talk about football and just bring negativity. I like to just talk about the positive moments in football that I just like to see. And so far this season, the script has been unpredictable, and especially for Premier League fans, because going into this season, we all thought, you thought, your sister thought, everyone thought that Liverpool were just going to dominate. Signing the likes of Florian Wirtz, Alexander Isak, we were saying call off the league. They already brought in Ekitike. They don't need this many players. But it's nearly the new year and Liverpool are nowhere to be seen at the top of the table. And Chelsea have crept their way up into a title race themselves. They are so back and we are so back as football fans, because who saw this coming? Who really saw this bald head instead of this bald head going this high up in the table this early on? I don't know. Of course, Arsenal are behaving like an absolute problem, and it's clear to see that. I made an entire video just about Arsenal's season so far, and even though they're top of the Premier League and top of the Champions League phase, Chelsea and Maresca's bold head went to Arsenal and got a draw. A draw that honestly felt like a win for a lot of Chelsea fans, because for the majority of this game they were down to 10 men but held their own against an Arsenal side that have been applauded as the best team in football right now. Yet Chelsea just turned up and dominated, with the likes of Reece James transforming into something that we have never seen. You know, this guy moving like a box-to-box midfielder. S tier. And of course, yes, I know Reece James played for midfield at Wigan and he won the player of the season, blah blah blah, we all know. But this was not seen in the prophecy. This was not written that Reece James was going to be dominating midfields against Arsenal in the Premier League. Bro, sit down. But enough about Arsenal, let's continue to get on to these Liverpool fans, because at the start of the season we fought it. Everyone thought that they were going for it all. But after a run of 9 losses in 12 games in all competitions, they are looking lost. A 4-1 defeat at the hands of PSV. PSV, bro. This is not PSG. PSV. They got used and dashed out the window. Arne Slot didn't know what was coming for him. But still, there is hope, because Alexander Isak just scored his first goal in Liverpool colours. He scored a goal against West Ham recently. West Ham. He didn't really play that good throughout the game. He missed multiple opportunities, but eventually he got his goal. And I think this is what we need to see from Liverpool. Because of course we can slander Isak, we can slander Wirtz, but when Isak and Wirtz played together against West Ham and the likes of Mohamed Salah was dropped, we saw Liverpool actually embrace this new system that Arne Slot is trying to implement. So maybe the system isn't the problem, maybe it's the individuals that Arne Slot is utilizing in the system. So maybe you have to take out Salah to get the best out of your side. There's big decisions that have to go in to this guy's round head, and he's got to make them fast, because we're going into 2026 now, and this is serious mode. This is where things start to pick up and clubs start to get points. There's a run-in of games for Liverpool that seem like they can take advantage of, and they do need to take advantage of it by getting win after win after win. We've also seen the likes of Manchester City's frailties and also brilliance this season so far, with Haaland honestly coming back on this sort of villain arc. You know, this guy was cosplaying as the Joker in Halloween times, and now he's actually is the Joker, bagging in goals week in and week out. Already hitting double figures in the league and putting himself up there as one of the top performers in football right now. In Spain, we've of course got the classic title race between the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid, with both of these sides failing to deliver the goods really, because they have both been fragile, to say the least. Both of these sides don't know really what they're doing. You know, Hansi Flick is still playing a high line that's so high it's got a wedgie. You know, this high line's got a wedgie, bro. It's way too high. But slowly but surely, you are seeing the star men from last season come back into the realm. You know, Rafinha is coming back from injury. He started the other day and played very well. And I know they're still missing Pedri, but once all of the key players are back playing in that system, we are going to see these players thrive under Hansi Flick again. And while Barcelona are trying to figure things out and tweak the system, Real Madrid are making the system themselves. You know, they're on ChatGPT. How can I make a football team play good? Because it seems like two of the only players that are playing good for Real Madrid right now are Kylian Mbappe and Arda Güler. And it's not like this team don't have the star power. They have the Avengers. Let me just pick out a centre back from Bournemouth that was breaking through as one of the best in the league. Bring him to the Bernabeu and now he's just another player in the system. Trent Alexander-Arnold, the best right back in the Premier League for Liverpool, let's just take him and now he's just another player in a dead system. Vinicius Jr., who a couple seasons back was a Ballon d'Or contender and someone that got robbed, let me just take him and now he's just a system man. The only player that is really thriving under Xabi Alonso is Kylian Mbappe, and it is because he is Kylian Mbappe. And if you look at his underlying stats, he's got the goals, he's getting the assists, but he's also had so many chances created. Like, if you compare his chances created to the likes of Haaland and Kane, who he's also in the running for as, you know, the top goal scorer in all competitions, Mbappe is creating the chances but also scoring them himself, leading in the Champions League scoring tables too, especially after that performance that we saw I think a week ago against Olympiacos. This guy scored 4 goals and a hat-trick in like 20 minutes. In Italy, we are witnessing a strange race to win a Scudetto, because it seems like all of the sides don't really want it enough. Right now it's pretty much a Royal Rumble at the top of the Serie A, with the likes of Milan, Napoli, Inter, Roma, throw Como in there too. These teams are all within a point of each other and you can't really tell them apart when they play each other too. Roma under Gasperini have turned into a horrible team to play against, barely conceding and winning a lot of tight games. Just imagine if this Roma side does the unthinkable. That will be something that nobody would have predicted come the start of the season. And in this league, if you're watching week in and week out, it's like with any given game, you can just fall out of the top 4. And while that's going on, you've got Jamie Vardy just having a party with Cremonense, scoring against the likes of Bologna in a 3-1 win. He's doing madman celebrations in front of ultras. And I think there's just something about a Premier League cult hero doing it in another league that just warms the hearts of football fans. In Germany, it seems like it's business as usual for Bayern Munich because they have just taken this league and made it their own again. Something like Lewandowski and Müller when they were playing for Bayern. But no, in this timeline, it's Harry Kane and Michael Olise. They've pretty much been top non-stop since the start of the year, with them going on a massive winning streak since the start of the season. Their first real loss was against Arsenal. A loss that really shook up football because Bayern Munich were looking like the most informed team in football and also one of the most dominant. And one thing about this Vincent Kompany side that we need to remember is that they almost always respond when they lose. It's something that Kompany has just instilled in these players. You've seen him in training videos. He's actually defending himself like him in his prime. He's defending in the training videos, helping out this side. He wants these players to get better. And slowly but surely, this side is going to get better. And they still got star men that are injured and making their way back through rehab. In France, it's also a similar story with familiar faces leading the charge. But let's not forget to talk about this side full of prisoners in Marseille. This team is doing bits here and there. In Europe, in the league, they got players that are outstanding, but others that should not be named. But wait, Jib, you forgot to talk about one team that is actually at the top of Liga. Lens. Yes, Lens for you guys that can't pronounce. They are at the top and it is kind of weird, but also we all inevitably know that PSG are going to win the league, but they're doing their thing. No one really thinks that watches French football that Lens are going to win, Ligue 1. But Edouard is doing his thing. Their attack are doing their thing, but they are just having one of them seasons. But if I'm being completely honest, it's just PSG making their lives hard. They don't really care about the league. They just mess about. They also at one point didn't have a lot of their key men and they were just playing youngsters week in and week out. Luis Enrique doesn't even watch the games, on the line. He's in the stands for the first half, then comes down after. Like, this whole league is just an experiment. I don't know how it's still going. Who is funding this? It's just awful. But awful in like a good way because you can't really predict what's going to happen. But again, I must reiterate that PSG are still the favourites. They still have the deepest squad. They are just playing and they're just doing their thing. And slowly but surely, let's see in a couple months from now how that league is shaping up. And let's not all lie and say that PSG are having a bad season because we've seen them take it there in the Champions League. Like in the game where PSG went up against Barcelona in the Champions League phase. This was peak entertainment. People forget because this happened so early on, but this was a game to marvel at. And even though PSG didn't have their proper front three starting, they still ended up winning the game, and Nuno Mendes and Hakimi played absolutely brilliant, with Nuno Mendes honestly going 1v1 with Lamine Yamal. This was just them going back and forth the entire game, with Nuno Mendes coming out on top at times and Lamine Yamal just having moments where he was in flow state, going past players, dribbling round players, doing roulettes. It was an amazing game to watch, and eventually it would be Gonzalo Ramos that would get the winner for PSG in the game. That was a league phase game that honestly felt like it should have been the Champions League final last season. And the Champions League in itself has felt like a fever dream this season. Big ties with big games, the likes of Arsenal just dusting off Bayern Munich, handing Bayern their first defeat in the season in dominant fashion, especially after a first half that had Arsenal fans shaking in their boots. The likes of Lennart Kohl coming to the Emirates and he had twinkle toes at times. He was dribbling past players. Michael Olise was causing havoc on that right hand side. but the Arsenal players recalibrated at half-time and went at the Bayern Munich team. Then of course you had Chelsea just dismantling Barcelona. They let Barcelona come to Stamford Bridge and Lamine Yamal got locked up by Cucurella. You know, Caicedo was moving like prime Makelele. Esteval was trying to show the world who he is, you know, scoring, and the likes of Liam Delap scoring. They would eventually win the game 3-0. It was amazing. You had Barcelona going to St James's Park and winning 2-1 with Marcus Rashford putting up a masterclass. Arsenal going up against Manchester City early on in the season with Haaland, you know, getting in behind the likes of Saliba and Gabriel, the two best defenders in the league and maybe the world. And then this hype in football has just extended onto the international stage too, with the World Cup qualifiers. I don't even know if I have to mention it, but Ireland pulling off a 2-0 victory against Portugal and Ronaldo, with Ronaldo getting sent off in the game. Then they go on to win 3-2 against Hungary deep into stoppage time via Troy Parrott, with Troy Parrott honestly marking his name in Irish folklore. You know, this guy, we ain't talking about leprechauns no more. I'm talking about Troy Parrott. At the end of the rainbow, you're going to find this guy. Scotland also had a big moment that sent them into contention for the World Cups too. England would also cruise during the qualifying rounds and not lose a single game. And I think a lot of it has to be put down to Foden's assist to Eze. Bro, this assist was generational. Slow it down. Zoom in. That pass, amazing. Don't know about the finish though. Bit dodgy. And then we've also just had random moments like the other day when Van Persie brought on his son. Bro subbed in his own regen for Feyenoord. Pretty much in this 2025/26 season so far, I'ma just say it, we are so back. And this has only just been a couple months into the season. We've got a whole other half. We got 2026 football to think about. And of course I missed many things out in this video, but you guys tell me what's been your favorite moment of the 2025/26 season in football so far. And of course we'll round up the entire season at the end of it, but this was just me talking about my feelings about this season so far. So of course if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you are new to it. Yeah, stay safe, stay blessed, and peace.